Hi, I'm Dr. Jennifer Bahr,
And I'm Jody Putnicki.
and we work together to help kiddos recover from PANS and PANDAS. I'm a naturopathic doctor, and Jody is a PANS mom extraordinaire. And the two of us come together to teach moms about PANS and PANDAS and homeopathy, which happens to be my area of expertise. So for this year, for PANS and PANDAS Awareness Day, we are doing a little bit of a different video. Last year, we did a really long video. This was also pretty long, I will acknowledge, but it's different. So last year, Jody and I gave lots of education about what PANS and PANDAS is, how it's diagnosed, what it looks like, and Jody shared her and her daughter's story and their journey to healing. That video is still available if you want to check it out. But this year, we had a whole lot of people who wanted to share their stories and their hope and healing. So we decided we were going to hand it over to them. That being said, we are going to start off, just for anybody who's brand new to PANS and PANDAS, with a brief description about what PANS and PANDAS is, what's happening in the body, what it looks like, and then just a little bit about homeopathy, just so you have some context for what everybody is talking about in the 20 plus videos that we have coming for you with parents and kids who've come to share their stories. So let's start off, Jody, with a brief description about what PANS and PANDAS is. So PANS stands for Pediatric Acute Onset Neuropsychiatric Syndrome. PANDAS is Pediatric Autoimmune Neuropsychiatric Disorder associated with streptococcal infection. PANS is the big umbrella. PANDAS is just one subset of it. So it's basically when the immune system is having a malfunction, basically, and it is attacking the body, specifically the cells of the nervous system and the basal ganglia in particular, instead of attacking or in addition to attacking the infection or whatever the body sees as something that would trigger an immune response. So PANDAS, it's specifically strep. PANS, it can be anything that triggers an immune response. So we're talking about other infections like mycoplasma, Lyme, Bartonella. We're talking about mold, even allergies. Kids will have flares with really severe environmental allergies, food allergies. So anything that can trigger an immune response, it's a misdirected immune response. And kids end up having an awful lot of various symptoms. And so Jody's going to tell you a little bit about what PANDAS actually looks like.
Yes, what this looked like in my home. So my daughter was a perfectly healthy, happy little girl. And then all of a sudden, we started to slowly see changes happen in her. Things like OCD, anxiety. She had sleep regression. She had age regression. She had some restrictive eating. She had issues with school. All of a sudden, she's always been a great student. All of a sudden, she had a really, really hard time with math and reading, and her self-confidence in her ability to do school. She was having rages. She was having just all day long, just profound sadness. She was lots and lots of stomach aches, lots of headaches, just 100% for a good portion of the time, just irrational and really kind of out of it. She just went from being one little girl to just something completely, it was not even her. It was a completely different child.
Yeah. So like Jody said, for a lot of people, it can be sudden onset, but for about 40% of people, it's not. It can actually come on over time or be gradual. A lot of people will see that there were peaks where, something happened that they would excuse away by being developmental, or, this is transient, it's going to go away. And then they sort of build and compound on each other. So it can come on overnight and be sudden, which is the more classical presentation, but it's not always going to be that case. There tends to be flares that occur with it. And so they'll tend to get worse for a while, and then they'll come back to baseline, but the baseline's not quite as good as the time before. And then the next flare is a little bit worse than the time before, back to baseline. With or without treatment. Sometimes this tends to resolve on its own, which is why it can go undetected for years. And then in retrospect, you realize that there was a lot of things happening. Some of the symptoms that Jody didn't really bring up, or maybe I missed, if I did, sorry.
Or remember.
Some of the symptoms that can occur. So we're talking about all the behavioral changes that Jody mentioned, separation anxiety, intense anxiety at night, insomnia, rages, depression. Kids can actually get hallucinations as part of PANS or PANDAS. OCD is the most stereotypical thing that you're going to see. So usually people, if somebody is like not as familiar, like really understanding what PANS and PANDAS can look like, they might be looking for only OCD, restricted eating, and tics. But there's a big spectrum of what it can actually look like. So Ticks is another symptom that you'll see come on. Bedwetting is a really big one. So regression. So it could also be, it may not be bedwetting. It could be what people call phantom wetness, or just urinary incontinence. Could be during the day, not necessarily at night in a previously potty trained child. So if somebody's never been potty trained, it's not as specific to that. And then, as Jody said, regressions in behavior. A lot of kids will almost like lose half of their age developmentally. You'll see a 10-year-old acting like a 5-year-old. They'll have reading and math regression in particular. Handwriting will also oftentimes get really, really sloppy. And so there's just a lot of overall regressions in their ability to manage things. Sensory processing can also be a really big component, and difficulty regulating temperature. So a lot of times we'll see kids in specific, mostly really sensitive to heat, and not able to tolerate heat, and then huge problems with sensory. So if a child is suddenly angry about the sound of you chewing food, or can't tolerate lights or sounds, that's potentially a warning sign that PANS or PANDAS might be what's going on. Let's shift gears a little bit to talk about susceptibility, and then we'll touch on what homeopathy is. And the reason we're going to talk about susceptibility first is because susceptibility is what homeopathy actually addresses, which is why, as you'll hear with all of these videos that these parents were just so eager to share with you, that homeopathy ended up being a turning point for a lot of people, because homeopathy addresses susceptibility. And so when I talk about susceptibility, I'm talking about the way that your child or you or anybody responds to a specific trigger. So let's talk about PANDAS in specific. If strep was the problem, then everybody who had strep would have the same type of reaction. Not even everybody who has PANDAS has the same reaction to strep, even if they're having this atypical reaction to strep. So what we're talking about susceptibility is the way the body responds. We can even talk about susceptibility from a lower level, like whether somebody gets something or not. Because if you put a kid with strep into a classroom, not every single kid in the classroom is going to get strep. So you start off with whether they're susceptible to it, period. And susceptibility can fluctuate over time. So in that moment, when you put that kid with strep in the classroom, 30 kids, 10 of them are going to get strep, 20 of them are going to be fine. So 10 of them were susceptible to strep in the first place. One of them is going to get tics and OCD. And then another kid is going to get rage and sleep regression and school refusal. Those 2 kids who got strep out of the 10, 2 of them were susceptible to PANDAS in different ways. And so homeopathy addresses the way we respond to something. It addresses that susceptibility. And I know this was a really big turning point for you in understanding why homeopathy ended up being an important part for your life. So I want to let you talk about that for a second, Jody.
Yeah, I spent a good deal of time not understanding why my daughter was stuck in the symptom cycle. Whenever we were going through all of the treatments, trying to find something that would help her, we'd give her give her antibiotic. For a little bit. But then she would go back into it. And every time she went back into it, it seems like she got a little tiny bit worse as we went along. And I remember, when I was doing all my research and, trying to figure out what was going on, I felt this feeling that I was missing something, like there was something out there that I just hadn't found yet that was going to be like the last piece to our puzzle. But again, continued in the cycle, and then got to the point eventually where I opened my mind up to homeopathy and was willing to try it. And really, once we got later into my daughter's healing journey, it really, really made sense to me what susceptibility was, and what it was to actually heal the root problem that was going on. And so it took us going through treatment and then getting to the point where my daughter got strep throat. She got multiple different illnesses. She got she lost a tooth. She went through swimming in a chlorine pool without regressing. All of these things happened over time without her regressing. And that is the point where it finally made sense to me that I was like, okay, like we've healed that actual root problem, which is the susceptibility. So now she can get an infection. She can lose a tooth or swim in a chlorinated pool. and have a normal, appropriate immune response instead of going right back into that misguided immune response that made her body go crazy. So I feel like, there's so many families out there that are still searching, still trying to figure it out, going from treatment to treatment to treatment. And we have to keep going back because we're not addressing susceptibility. And if we can address susceptibility, heal the root problem, that's what gets our kids out of this symptom cycle.
So I want to make sure that we're really clear here. We are not saying that homeopathy is the be all end all answer for everybody. We are saying homeopathy is what we happen to have expertise at, and we have found it to be very effective, especially for kiddos where everything else has failed. And it's also been very helpful for kiddos who started with homeopathy and helped them to prevent having to use some of the things. So this is not us saying that homeopathy is a be all end all. We know that there are lots of kids who have great success with conventional therapies, other natural therapies, but this is just our area of expertise. So this is what we're talking about. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to what homeopathy is, but homeopathy is an entire system of medicine that has a whole lot of history behind it, a whole lot of different ways of thinking about medicine. And we teach people about this in our Facebook group. So if you happen to want to learn a little bit more about what we're talking about, Homeopathy for Pans and Pandas is a Facebook group where we do lots of education. I would encourage you to join there because we just don't have the time to go into the hours and hours worth of videos that we've got to explain and teach people about pans and pandas and homeopathy and all things related to helping kids get their lives back and get families get their kids back. And so join us there. If you would like to learn more about homeopathy, but here's my little brief 30,000 foot overview. So homeopathy is a system of medicine that's based off of like cures like. So what we do is we give people medicines that are prepared in a very dilute way, so they're very safe, based off of the symptoms that they're presenting as their susceptibility, that external representation of that internal susceptibility. And so when we give this very small dose to these kiddos, it helps stimulate the body's innate ability to heal. So it corrects the immune system's response so that the immune system no longer attacks self cells, but that it can actually appropriately fight off infections and then in time make the person less susceptible. So what we actually see occur for these kiddos, and what Jody was just saying happened with her daughter, is that they go from being that classroom of kids, those 30 kids, they end up going from being the kid who gets strep and ends up with OCD, food restriction, and tics. They end up being the kid who then gets the regular strep infection, so fever and sore throat, to then being the kid who is less likely to get the strep infection. And that's through helping address their susceptibility, moving them through those stages. Homeopathic medicines are not anything natural. A lot of people think that homeopathy means anything natural. That's not the case. So a supplement or an herb is not necessarily a homeopathic medicine unless it's prescribed in that like cures like manner based off of the symptoms that are being produced, and if it's being given at the smallest possible dose, so that dilute dose. So it's both of those things have to be in place for something to actually be homeopathic. So a lot of the ways that things are talked about being homeopathy are not actually the case. Jody, was there anything else that you wanted to share about homeopathy before we shifted into letting you be Pan's mom?
I don't think so. I think the thing that just rings truest with us moms and dads that have kiddos with this is, our bodies have the ability to heal, and homeopathy can help them heal. I think, our kids are so complex. They have so much going on that their bodies just need a little bit of help. And it makes sense that we can use something gentle and safe like homeopathy to help our children's bodies heal.
So when we asked our group, so there's over 11,000 people in there currently, we asked our group what they would like to see us do for Pans and Pandas Awareness Day. And it came really clearly they wanted to share with you their experience because this is a community that is very committed to helping people understand and identify pans and pandas and find relief. And so this is coming from them. This is their personal experience and their desire to share it with you in hopes that it will help some of you or all of you to find some relief, maybe identify something for your kiddo and find some relief for yourself. So Jody, if you don't mind, I'm going to actually ask you to step in and be our first mom who gets to answer the questions that we've asked everybody to has wanted to participate. So Jody, was homeopathy the first thing that you tried when you realized that your daughter had PANS?
No, it wasn't. I wish it would have been, but it was not. We did go through doing the antibiotics. We went through some functional medicine, and towards the end, we actually did IVIG, which did not end up well for my daughter. Um, I I really wish it was the first thing that we did. It would have saved us a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of heartache. But yeah, no, it wasn't. It wasn't our first route. And also,
What
I
was it
thought
that?
it. I'm sorry. I had other moms telling me about homeopathy.
Mhm,
And I thought homeopathy was just ridiculous, that it was the
mhm,
craziest thing I'd ever heard about. Oh, it's like woo woo medicine. Like it doesn't make any sense. And there's really like, look how complex my kid is. There is no way a
mhm.
little sugar pill with something coated on it is going to help my kid get out of this. It just makes no sense. So I was completely shut down to it.
Right. So, what made you finally be open to it?
Um, Getting to the point where I recognized that antibiotics were wrecking my kid's body. She was having more and more GI issues as we went along. She was also having some pretty wild responses to antibiotics, even to some of the supplements that we were giving her. And then, of course, IVIG. It just seemed like she would get a little help here and there, but then all of a sudden she'd have this wild and crazy response. We kind of got to the end of everything. But also, I was wanting to move in a more natural direction because I felt like I was doing damage as I went along, and trying to get rid of these symptoms was actually damaging her body with the treatments that I was using on her. So I finally got to the point where I opened my mind up, started researching. It was also kind of a last resort. I mean, we
Mhm.
really didn't have anything left. And so it was like, okay, maybe my mind was opened up for me by going through all of that stuff, and it not really working out. But once I got to homeopathy, I was all in, checked in, ready for it. But it took me a little bit to get there.
And how did it change things for you and your family once you actually started using homeopathy?
It it changed everything. Homeopathy was the journey was not easy. It was hard work, but it was so worth it. My It's not even believable what our lives was like. Having a child with this condition is um, it's a level of trauma that I could have never imagined, and trauma for my entire family. What we were living, what was going on inside my house every day, what we were managing, and it was crazy. I have my family back. I have my little girl back. Watching her go through this recovery journey was amazing. It was literally like watching her come back to me little bits at a time, because she was completely gone for a long time. I didn't have my kid. And so watching her come back to me was amazing. Having her be healthy. It's been 2 years now. She's been healthy, happy, doing amazing. All of the struggles that she was having during that time are completely gone, and she's just living a regular life. My family was consumed with with sickness and heartache. That is completely gone. We just enjoy each other now. We enjoy each other's companies. I just get to be a mom. I don't have to spend hours researching. I don't have to be going from appointment to appointment. I don't have to do all of those things. I literally get to be the mom that when I was younger, I always wanted to be. Like, I just get to enjoy my kids. I have the ability to work now. I have the
Mhm.
ability to have my own life and, achieve my own goals again. As far as my marriage, I would venture to say that homeopathy, saved my marriage, or maybe just opened it up to not be consumed with all of the things. It is homeopathy. Just it literally gave us our life, and gave my kids the life they deserve. Oh, I'm gonna get teary.
And then finally, Jody, what advice would you give to a mom who suspects that her kid might have Pans or Pandas?
I think the very first thing is that I would say that, and this is a hard thing. These are things that, in hindsight, I would have done, not things that I did, because they're hard. set down all the expectations. Pans and Pandas is going to take a little bit of time to navigate. And you're just literally going to have to set the expectations that the world has of you as a mother or a father down, because whenever you were dealing with Pans and Pandas, everything's going to be different. You're going to parent different, and that's okay. You're going to, what your family looks like, how you run your family, it's all going to be different, and it is okay. I would say, have hope. There's absolutely hope. And this is a big thing for me, and why I'm still here in this world is because, back when we were going through it, I needed hope so bad, and there wasn't a whole lot of hope out there. And, going through this healing journey and having Avery be, this little girl that she is now, I know that there's hope for our kids. I know that there's something that we can do to change how this is going. I know that we can heal or help their bodies heal. Don't ever give up hope, and just don't stop fighting, and give yourself so much grace. Again, something I did not do through the process. Give yourself grace. You're gonna need to do that for yourself, and just keep fighting. Just keep taking steps until you get your kid well.
Well, thank you, Jody. We're going to shift gears, and we're going to hand over the reins to lots of mamas who wanted to share, and a dad too, and some kids who wanted to share their experience with PANS, their experience with homeopathy and other treatments as well, and then offer you some of their advice. And we've got some great snippets from kids where they are actually telling you what Pans and Pandas feels like, as well as what they feel like now. And so I just want to give you guys a little reminder that we do have that Facebook group, the Homeopathy for Pans and Pandas. And I bring this up because you just get a tiny snippet of these people's stories, but a lot of them have been so generous, and they have joined me or they've joined Jody to share their family's journey with you, to help you see what the different ways that Pans and Pandas can present, to see the different steps that they've taken, because these are families that are generous, and they want to give. They want to help people shortcut. There are people who've been through the ringer, and they want to help people get out the ringer on the other side faster if they can. So in that Facebook group that we host, we've got lots of educational videos, me and other docs on my team teaching you about all things related to Pans, Pandas, and homeopathy, as well as other natural therapies, everything that comes together to impact outcomes for you, to give you just education to help you make informed decisions. We've got lots of support with the moms and the dads who are in the community. Jody and I do a regular mom and doc talk in there to help support people, helping make sure that they're really educated. And then, like I said, a lot of the people who you're going to see in the following videos have come and done guest hosts where they've just shared their stories. And some have actually committed to doing some updates for us too. So it's a great place, a great resources to come if you want to hear more about any of these individuals and their journey to Pans, Pandas, their journey through it. They're all on the other side. Some of them are still in the middle of it. But it's a place to connect. So I encourage you to join us, Homeopathy for Pans and Pandas, if you want to hear any more. And with that, we are going to hand it over to everybody who wants to share their experience with you. And cut. So was homeopathy the first thing you decided to try when you first realized that your kiddos had Pans or Pandas?
No, it was not the first thing at all. Like most people, when they first suspect or think that the child has Pans and Pandas, and you start looking for treatment plans, it's antibiotics or some kind of allopathic support treatment. So that was obviously the first thing we tried. Didn't help much, a little bit. So, and I wasn't comfortable with having months and months of antibiotics, and it just felt wrong for us. So I started to look for an alternative, and I found a naturopathic doctor who used herbals, but still had the same philosophy that let's go after the infections. Mm-hmm. So, and after a while, that obviously helped. Every time we had an acute infection, we would get relief of symptoms. But then after 6 months or so, I was like, do we have to do this for the rest of their lives? And I wasn't comfortable with that either. And I started to look for, is there anything else that can actually cure this whole thing instead of keeping us in this roller coaster? And that's how I found out about homeopathy.
So my next question is, of course, what made you decide to switch to homeopathy? Was there anything about homeopathy in general that made you decide to give it a try?
A lot of things. First of all, I didn't understand much about it. I heard about it before, and it felt like too good to be true at first, and almost unreal because of the way it works and the way we've been treating my children prior to that. So it didn't make much sense to me. But also desperation and a little bit more research, understanding that we have to tackle the root cause instead of just going after infection. So it felt comfortable for me to understand that if we fix the immune system, we will get rid of all these issues. So that for me made sense, even though homeopathy by itself was mystical, magical treatment. So that was one. And the other thing, the easiness of it. We were on multiple different herbals and different schedules. So I had 2 children with PANS and PANDAS. So it was like lists of things to give to them, nasty tasting stuff for them to swallow. The fact that I just told them, do you want sugar? And they were like, are you crazy, Mom? Because they are not allowed to have sugar. The easiness of it. And then just one little thing, it was so much easier for us. Mm-hmm. It's cheaper and safe, super safe. So I knew I'm not putting things into their bodies that they can't handle. Or it's a stressor for their liver or kidneys. Or I knew that it's safe and gentle. So those were the main things that really attracted me to it.
So now that you're using homeopathy, how has it affected your family? So for you and for your kiddos?
Oh my goodness. Massive change. So me and my 2 kids were all pretty sick at the time of the onset of PANS. And there just have been so many symptoms that have disappeared, crippling symptoms that have disappeared that the traditional medical world could not give us answers, or the solutions and answers were not okay for us. So I got 2 kids back. They have pretty healthy, normal childhood right now. I got myself back and my health. So yeah, huge change. Plus, it's changing my husband right now, who was the biggest skeptic throughout all of this. So the whole family is healing. And I have 2 dogs. I'm looking into homeopathy for my dogs as well. So it has truly changed our family completely.
Fantastic.
That's awesome. Hannah, I know that, as moms, hearing this feedback from our kiddos is so valuable. And you had talked to your girls about and asked them a couple of questions to share feedback with. And the specific questions were, what does PANS feel like? And how did homeopathy help? What did your girls have to say about that?
So my younger one has a lot of tics. She had scary hallucinations, visual and auditory. So she told me that PANS feels like somebody has taken over your brain and has taken over your body, and you have no control and you have no saying what your body does. She said it feels scary. She also has a lot of anxiety and fears. And my older one, who had difficulty swallowing, difficulty eating, she lost a lot of weight, crippling anxiety during her onset. She felt like all those scary things that she thought about were so real that she couldn't really function. She couldn't live her life. And the fact that she's able to eat now, she really thoroughly enjoys all the food. So she's happy about eating as well. So she said, I asked her, how does it feel? And how do you feel now? And she said, like, completely different. Like, she's like a different person right now.
Yeah. Awesome. So what advice would you give somebody that suspects that their child has PANS or PANDAS?
Definitely moms and dads, but trust your gut feeling. If I had listened to the doctors that first told us, first of all, that it's nothing, PANS is not real, or gave misdiagnosis like Tourette syndrome, for example, for my younger one, we would not be here right now. It's terrifying for me to even think about where would she be right now if we listened to them. So if your gut is telling you that this is something is off. This doesn't feel like the diagnosis that was given. Keep going. I wish I had found homeopathy much earlier. Luckily, it didn't take too much for us, but try to seek an advice from somebody like resilience naturopathic that does this every day. So you guys see these children every day, you know everything about it. So because it takes a lot of strength also to hear that you're crazy, your mom, or there's something wrong with you or your parenting, or just to find the answers first from those who actually know what Pans and Pandas is about and go after it.
Was homeopathy the first thing that you decided to try once you found out that your kiddo had PANS or PANDAS?
No, it was not. It was the last thing that we tried. And I think that we're all conditioned to start with Western medicine because that's kind of how most of us are brought up. And so that's where we started. But it was definitely the last thing that we tried.
What was it that made you decide to make that shift and go from the more conventional system of medicine to working with homeopathy?
A couple things. I have an acquaintance who we were connected. I knew of her, but we were connected through someone else in our community who had just started working with you. And her child was also doing IVIG. And that was what was suggested for our child. And we could not get it covered by insurance and fought them for over a year about it. And it was just super draining. And for myself, for my husband, for my child. And my husband and I sat down and we just said, why would we start with something like the next step that's really invasive? Why don't we start with something that's not invasive, that has a lot of good research behind it? I read and read and read in between. And if that doesn't work, then we'll go to the more kind of what we felt like was invasive, procedure to try to get him better.
Okay. And was there anything about homeopathy that you felt more comfortable with compared to other things, or was it just that it was less invasive?
Well, I felt comfortable with what I had read about the success rates.
Mm-hmm.
And I think your support group that I got on was really, really helpful in reading. And I'm kind of an information hound, so I need to do that to feel comfortable with things. Mm-hmm. And I think that I come from kind of a medical background myself, and I just felt like there's so many different ways to skin the cat, so to speak, that mm-hmm. it felt good. And I wasn't super familiar with how it worked exactly. Mm-hmm. So when I talked to Dr. Way for the first time, I said, I'm not really comfortable with this. And in some ways, to be quite honest, I feel like it's sort of witchcrafty in my head. And he said, Kari, this is never the first thing that people usually try. It's usually kind of this situation. And so he was really great about it. And I felt that made me feel more comfortable because he was so understanding of how my husband and I were feeling about it.
Yeah. Especially
my husband, who isn't the primary kind of caregiver. So,
yeah. Well, so once you've started homeopathy, now that you've been using it for a while, how has it changed your life for your family, like for you and for your kiddo?
It's changed our life like immensely. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional. My kid is in school today, so that's changed a lot. He was home for 2 years. And he went back last year, and if you told me like, hey, your kid's going to be homeschooled for 2 years because he's really sick and no one can figure out what's wrong with him, and then there's going to be a pandemic and he's going to be back home, I would have been like, that's funny. And that's what happened. So he ended up choosing to go to a different school this year. We gave him lots of choices, and he is doing awesome and doing his homework and making friends, and his nervous system is doing better and all of that. So that was the goal years ago. I remember this has been a 7-year journey for us. And I remember my husband and I saying a few years ago, okay, the goal is just by 9th grade to like get him to a place where he can really function, the way that he used to. Mm-hmm. And so that's been amazing. I think we're still working on our relationship, my 14-year-old and I, because that gets pretty destroyed in the process of nobody understanding what's going on. And so this school, I said to them, I need you to be school for him. I cannot be his doctor, his nurse, his teacher, his mom anymore, his therapist. Like, I just can't do it. And so they have been really great. And I think that's been really key, is to find a place that's really understanding and really helpful and accepting. And that's hard in a lot of places in our kind of conventional school system. But I think, you know, it's made all of us just take a breath. We're able to have relationships, and, you know, we still have our bumps in the road, but we're able to have our relationships kind of coming back to us that we lost for so long, all of us. I mean, including, I have an 18-year-old as well. And, you know, they're really impacted by this whole thing as well. So I think we're just all doing better.
Great. Awesome. Kari, you had talked to Porter before this and got a little bit of feedback from him. So what did he say that it felt like to have PANS?
Well, as I said to you ladies before this, he was having trouble remembering a little bit because he is feeling so much better. So there's hope on the horizon for those who are in the depths of despair, because we were there for a very, very long time. And what he did say, we kind of talked about it, and some of the words he used were that it was very lonely. It was really frustrating. I think when he was about maybe 8 or 9, a couple of years into this, he said to me, after being at yet another, you know, therapist or doctor or whatever, and I said, you know, I just don't want you to think that there's something really wrong with you and that you're not smart. And he said to me, just looked me straight in the eye and said, you know, Mom, I don't think that. I just don't think that these people have any idea what's wrong with me or how to help me. And it took another 4 years, I think, almost, for us to get that help. And he just, I think he felt very, I think alone is probably the best word to describe it. And like he was broken is another word that he used. And we're still working on that, you know, and that's a journey for us. I think a lot of things happened at school and other places that we didn't even know and still don't. And so the trauma that he endured through the process was really hard for him.
Yeah. I'm curious to know too his view of homeopathy and how it helped him in going through the process.
So what he said about homeopathy was he didn't really know what we were doing, because it's kind of complicated. And at the time he was 12 and a half maybe. And what he said about it was that we'd been doing a lot of functional medicine, and it was very helpful at the beginning. And then we just kind of hit this plateau. And that was another reason also, your previous question was why we looked for something else. And in addition to that, we still have a wonderful practitioner here that we work with, but he just said it was easier because you're not taking 20 supplements a day. I mean, he really had pill fatigue, which is like a real thing, as you guys know. And so we were fighting all the time just about, because we're working through that in therapy about like why, because the consequences were so dire if he didn't do what I needed him to do or take what I wanted him to take. And I was so panicked as a parent, wanting him to do what they're telling him to do. And it just was really hard. So he just said it was easier and it caused less friction between he and I, especially because it's once a day, right?
Yeah.
So
which is awesome. Easy for them is good. They deserve something easy.
Everything else is hard.
So what advice would you give to someone that suspects that their child has PANS or PANDAS?
To listen to their gut and try to find somebody who's PANS Panda literate, which can be hard, but it's out there, and look at the support groups all over, because I'm a really strong cookie and I'm not, that's not a normal thing for me. But it has been immensely helpful. And, find the right doctors. If you don't find them, or you get answers that make you feel uneasy, or that they're not helpful, or you're being challenged or pushed back at, keep going, because we knew that. And frankly, my child knew it. So maybe listen to your child as well. And just know that it doesn't mean they're broken. And the sooner you get that diagnosis from someone who can help, the easier, I should say, or it feels like you know, it is, because the longer it goes on, the harder it is to deal with.
So was homeopathy the first thing that you tried when you realized that you had PANS or PANDAS, or that's what you were dealing with?
It was not the first thing we tried. I grew up very Western medicine, and so we immediately went to the pediatrician who didn't know a whole bunch. We kind of fumbled around looking for someone that knew anything. We ended up driving about an hour away from us to a specialist who wasn't only PANDAS specialist, but kind of had heard of it. She did a bunch of alternative stuff, and we went through a bajillion blood tests and stool tests and all the tests, and I don't think it was very fun. A couple of years ago. So no, it was not the first thing we found.
So what is it that made you decide to switch to homeopathy or to give homeopathy a try?
I joined some of the Facebook groups and started listening to some of the stories. I think we actually found Poppy's diagnosis earlier than most people do. So we weren't, I shouldn't say we weren't in a crisis. It was hard. It was very hard, but comparatively speaking. So I started listening to what all these other people had gone through and chasing these labs and chasing numbers and trying to figure out what these triggers are. And it just seemed so overwhelming to me. I had never done homeopathy. I had never heard of homeopathy. But I didn't want to go down that route of antibiotics every day and just basically separating everything out and treating it separately. I wasn't into that. And homeopathy sounded excellent to me because it really looks at the body as a whole. And of course, it was natural and safe. I knew it wasn't going to be a quick road, but I really wanted to get down to healing her body so that it didn't matter what she came across in the future, we weren't going to have these issues anymore.
Great. So once you started using homeopathy, how has it changed your family's life, your life for each of you as individuals?
I would say the first main thing is that our old routine involved like 20 bottles of supplements and things in the morning and at night, and we had to administer them throughout the day. There was a lot of mad scientists in my kitchen. And there weren't that, I should say, tangible results weren't really quick. I'm sure we were doing something to alleviate, but we weren't really sure. And it was stressful. It was,
especially having to take sorry juice every morning. It was not delicious.
I think all of that led us to where we are, and I'm happy we went through it. But it was constant me going down the rabbit hole at night on Google trying to figure things out.
This was from homeopathy? Okay, this is before homeopathy.
I'm sorry, I didn't answer the question today. Homeopathy has changed all. It's taken all that away. It's taken all of that. It's cleared out my brain space. Let's put it that way. I'm not spending endless hours. All I'm doing is focusing on the family, looking at symptoms. It's simplified everything. We don't have to carry around with us this huge toolkit everywhere we go. We have a tiny little bio, which I just love. I have my whole little library now of remedies, and I would say simplification, even monetarily, drastically reduce the time involved in all of that. And all the guesswork, it's taken all that away.
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome. Poppy, I'd love to hear from you. What does it feel like having PANS?
Well, sometimes when you're at school, you feel like an outcast. You feel like nobody will like you, but you realize everyone has something and you're not alone. Like probably, I don't know, like 1 out of 20 people probably have, I don't know, that's not exact. Do not take that. I don't think that's exact, but it just feels sometimes like you're alone, but you're not.
Yeah. Yeah. And talk to me about homeopathy. How do you feel like homeopathy helped you?
I think it helped me because I had a lot of anger issues and I got really jealous sometimes, and I still do. Everyone gets jealous sometimes. Yeah. And I'm just glad that I'm not hurting my family anymore.
Yeah. And so homeopathy made you feel better?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. Good deal. And so Poppy, I want to hear your response to this one. And then Mom, I want to hear yours too. Poppy, what advice would you give to a friend, someone your age, that suspects that they might have PANS or PANDAS?
I would tell them not to worry and to tell their parent about it. And I would tell them that if they need anything, I'm there for them. And I'd also just say, don't worry about it, because everyone has something and you're not alone.
Right. Lori, how
So
about you? What advice would you give to someone?
I would say run, don't walk to homeopathic treatment. You know, time is going to pass anyways. And I think everyone shies away because it's not something that most of us have heard of or grew up with. It's been a game changer in our family. All four of us are now being treated. And I feel like healing as a family has been invaluable to us. So I would just say, hurry up, make that phone call. Don't chase down the numbers, the labs. Honestly, whether we really have PANDAS or not, or it really doesn't matter. What homeopathy has given us has been amazing. There's things I've healed from my childhood that I kind of didn't even know were there. The layers have come out, and it's still very fascinating to me, this how it all works and stuff. I love to chat about it. So call your homeopath. That's what I would say.
Great. Well, thank you
Awesome.
so much. All right. One. So did you start homeopathy when you first realized that your kiddo was dealing with PANS and PANDAS, or did you try something else first?
I tried something else first. We were living in California at the time, and we were in Northern California where there's actually a few doctors, and there's a nurse practitioner that specialize in PANS and PANDAS. And so we went that route first, and it was marginally helpful, but we didn't get the kind of, alleluias that we got with homeopathy. So my daughter, she's also autistic. And so we had actually been seeing a different homeopath for autism symptoms before that. So we knew that homeopathy worked. And so I began, joining different groups on Facebook. And, resilience is always the gold standard that comes up. So once I saw that, I joined your Facebook group and just kind of started, lurking and reading people's posts. And then we decided to go ahead and give resilience a try.
So was there anything in particular that made you interested in trying homeopathy in the first place, even before you started with us?
Yes, just because, traditional Western medicine has really failed my child at every turn. And so we knew, as my husband and I knew that we needed to try something different. She's very sensitive to medication, and even when we saw more natural minded doctors, she's also super sensitive to supplements, and she can't really handle supplementation. And when we started with the other homeopath, she has a different approach than resilience does. And she initially, we had a lot of gains from it. And so, I knew that it worked for her, but it wasn't as gentle an approach as resilience has. And so she was getting aggravated a lot of the time from the first person that we saw. And I'm glad that we saw that person. It's just that it just wasn't the right approach for her in terms of treating PANS. It was a different story for other symptoms she was having, but PANS needed a very different approach.
Got it. And so what changed, what shifted for her once you started using homeopathy to address the PANS?
I'm gonna show you a picture because I think pictures are, worth 1,000 words, but this is her like a month before we started with resilience. She was on the floor screaming and crying for most of the day, every day. And then this is a month. I'm so sorry about the glare, but this is
It doesn't even matter.
We see it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a month into treatment. And we've been with resilience for almost 2 years, and it's been 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but always consistently moving forward. And every time, she has a setback, I can actually show you like 3 different sets of before and after pictures where she's just, visibly distraught. And then, I get in touch with Dr. Peterson's, and a month later, she's a different child, So it's just been incredibly profound. And I always start crying when I talk about her healing journey, because it's, you know, it's been very, it's been painful and it's been traumatic, but you know, as you can see from those pictures, like there have been so many hallelujah moments where she just transforms and her happiness is restored and she's more comfortable and her body's not constantly screaming. So it's just been, you know, it's been the only intervention we've tried that has brought her and, you know, the rest of our family a lot of peace.
Yeah, that's so good to hear. Those pictures they speak so much more than we could ever say.
Yeah.
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 Thank you for sharing those.
You can
and literally just, you know, those pictures were a month apart and it was, you know, it was that quick. So it was, I know not everybody is, you know, lucky enough to have that exact experience, but you know, we've always been really fortunate with, you know, her first remedy worked right away. And then, you know, we've made a couple changes along the way, and some were, you know, not the right remedy, but we've always found the right one, you know, after trying, you know, trying one or two. So
awesome.
Sorry, I'm talking a lot.
So.
No,
you're
doing
totally
great. No, you're fine. And I was lost in thought. I love the pictures. You can just see health in the second. Like you could see a healthy child in that second picture. Sorry, I was stuck back on that one.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone that suspects that their child has PANS?
I think, you know, the most important thing that I did was reach out and find other parents whose children have PANS or PANDAS. Because, you know, in my experience anyway, her regular pediatrician was not exactly helpful. Since she is also autistic, so many of her symptoms were dismissed as autism, and I knew that wasn't it. And so, you know, it was really helpful for me to network with other parents to get advice about, you know, practitioners, different courses of treatment, what options are out there, and also just presentation of symptoms, because, you know, so many kids have so many different symptoms that, you know, I went on one of my Facebook groups and I described what was going on, and, you know, 20 parents chimed in and said, that's PANDAS, you know, get her tested. And so I don't know that would have been on my radar if I hadn't done that. So I think, you know, just the connection with other people who are on a similar journey. And also, you know, hearing that, you know, these kids respond well to treatment. You know, some kids respond well to IVIG, some respond well to antibiotics. And then, you know, there's kids like mine who can't really handle those kinds of things. So it's just nice to hear that, you know, homeopathy is an option. It works. It's profound. You know, I know it's not magic, but I sometimes call it magic just because, you know, it's just to see the quick transformation into health was just, you know, it was amazing.
If you don't mind, I'm going to ask you one more question, because I'm sure that there's a parent out there who needs to hear it. What was it that gave you that gut feeling that this wasn't just autism? Like, what was that indication for you that this was PANS and PANS? Because there's an awful lot of overlap between PANS and autism.
Yes. I mean, she changed overnight, literally changed overnight. Hers was actually caused by mold exposure. She, you know, before she had been a pretty happy-go-lucky kid. And then all of a sudden, like, I couldn't leave the room. I couldn't shower without her there. You know, she was raging, screaming, you know, obviously something was wrong, and she couldn't tell us because she didn't have language. And so she just, it was like, I know so many parents describe their kids as being possessed. It was like she was possessed. I mean, it was just like nothing I had ever seen before. And so, you know, that was my indication, because it was sudden and it was severe, and she was just a different child overnight.
But now Let's
But
end
now-
on a happy note with where she is now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now she is, she's happier. She's, it was really disruptive on the family. My two kids couldn't be in the same room together. Now they're holding hands. We used to be able to really not take her out in public, and now she loves going out. We can take her to a restaurant and sit down. She was, totally almost completely nonverbal when we started with resilience, and now she can say 100 words. So I mean, it's
amazing.
Just been like, Dr. Peterson's is like, the magic woman. It's just been I just I cry thinking about it, just because it's been just 2 years of consistent progress, acquiring new skills, understanding a lot more that we say to her, responding to a lot more, and just being able to verbalize, things that would normally frustrate her before. Now she can tell us if she's hungry or, whatever it is that she wants. So it's been amazing.
Great. So was homeopathy the first thing that you guys tried when you realized that your kiddos had PANS or PANDAS?
I wish. Unfortunately, no. We did the whole rodeo. We did 1 million antibiotics, 3,000 supplements. Each child had 9 rounds of IVIG.
Oh, wow.
Ozone therapy for one. I'm sure a million other things. We did it all and without success. And that brought us to you.
So what made you decide homeopathy was the place for you to go next when you weren't finding success in other areas?
Nothing else worked. And we were stalking you for a while. And
we actually found you while we were going through all these other protocols of like, this is the order you go, this is the order you go. And we were like, oh yeah, we just got IVIG approved or whatever it was, right? And then when our number was called to be able to meet with you, we had just started another process or procedure. So we were like, okay, we'll wait and we'll come back again. And so that's what happened.
Okay. And so the ones you did start homeopathy, how has that shifted things for your family? What's changed and how are you guys doing with homeopathy now?
It's got to be the easiest treatment compared to what we were doing. I'm going to say that one. It's ups and downs. It's a roller coaster ride. It takes time. But if the end of this game, we have our children healed and not susceptible to everything that was making them go bonkers, we'll take it. That's what we're here for.
Okay, put it a different way.
Yeah.
Going from around, it felt like 30,000 supplements and everything, and I was the one that was in charge. I felt like I was a pharmacist for 2 kids of so many different medications, this, that, the other, hardcore antibiotic, like it was insane. So to go from that to maybe at most 2 little sugar pellets covered with the dusting of something, that right there was life-changing.
Yeah.
Makes life easier. Emory and Jensen, we'd love to hear from you guys. What does having PANS feel like?
You want to talk first or you want Jensen?
I don't know.
All right, Jensen, what does it feel like?
It's interesting because Emory and I have completely different symptoms, with his being more outwards and mine being in. That was bad wording.
That was great.
That was good work.
But like,
Perfect.
I'll start thinking about things, and then I'll tell myself to stop thinking about it. I can't stop thinking about it.
What else? Anything?
Like, I don't know. I with homeopathy, it's really weird. I don't like track what happens after homeopathy, because I feel like one of the reasons that I might do it could have been because it's like normal, like every day I like have it most of the time. And so like maybe it's because like I don't like recognize that, oh, I might be getting better, because and normally normally they're in charge of that stuff and they want me to like be doing it, but I don't keep track of it, and I have the memory of a goldfish.
The goldfish memory is a symptom we're still ironing out.
Still working on.
What are some other things that are like you're completely rocking right now thanks to homeopathy? How's school?
Better.
Come on. Give it up.
It's good, but I still can't do the writing assignments.
Okay, forget about writing. What are you excelling at?
Theater, but oh well.
Theater, friends, socializing, being a leader, student council.
Elected head of student council.
Oh my gosh, congratulations.
This is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Huge.
That's
Who needs memory?
right. And Elise, do you want to answer for Jensen or
For Emory?
I'm sorry, Emory.
I so want his words because they are magical, but it seems like we lost him. I'm gonna see if I can give him one more chance. Emory, we need you. Can you join us, please? We're counting on you.
It's all good. This is Pan's life, right? Like this is why we're doing this for Pans and Pandas Awareness Day. I'm so grateful that your whole family was willing to come because this is part of Pan's life, and this is, better than it was before, but still Pan's life.
We're still ironing out. Yes.
Yeah.
The way he describes it a lot is good bugs, bad bugs. And it's all about the good bugs overcoming the bad bugs, but the bad bugs make him do things that he doesn't want to do. And so it's that constant conflict within himself, because he is such a super sweet, amazing, smart kid, but sometimes he'll just go off. And it's one thing if you think that they mean to do it, but he doesn't mean to do it. And that is come and talk, come and join us. You could see, I don't know if you could see a smile back there, but like a smile that goes
Get in here, Emory.
500 yards each way. So that's, and for him, it is, as Jensen was saying, it is a little bit more outward. So it's a lot more noticeable. Whereas with Jensen, had we not known about Pans AE, we would have probably just chalked it up. Oh, well, that's what teenagers go through, especially girls.
No, where you guys are blaming on cancer.
We could come up. You can come up with excuses for everything. We look at how this is what we grew up with our friends when we were kids. So why is it any different? Now we're just realizing all of those people that we thought were normal and going through like crazy stuff back then, which was just a way of life, that could have all been taken care of had we known.
Yeah. So many people had Pans as children that didn't have any idea that they had Pans as a kid. So.
Jonathan and Elise, what advice would you guys give to someone that suspects that their kiddo has Pans or Pandas?
I would say cut to the front of the line and call you guys. The years that we wasted trying everything else, the time, the money as symptoms were getting worse, the game with doctors, it took 9 neurologists before we got the proper diagnosis.
Across the city of Los Angeles, which is considered one of the forefronts of medicine, and we couldn't get them to agree that this even existed.
So I would recommend skip all of that. We've tried it, we've done it, it was awful. And just cut to the front of the line and start healing these bodies naturally.
But I would also go to from a different perspective. Be strong advocates. This is not a reflection on you or your parenting. Everybody might want to blame it on you or your parenting, but it's not about that. It's no longer about that. It's about getting the kids safe and healthy. And it's all about looking at what the symptoms are and being patient and capturing what's going on, as opposed to responding or reacting to what's going on, which is so hard, but it's so important to be able to keep your head above water, because with this, everything else is trying to drag you underwater. And that's, if I could offer other than what Elise said about really going and jumping the line, be an advocate, be fierce. Don't chalk things up. Don't assume that things are just, oh, well, that's how teenagers are, because that's not. And once we start doing that, we start minimizing how we can help the kids.
Say goodbye, bad bugs. We're
Goodbye,
getting rid of them. Get out, bad bugs. We don't want you here.
So was homeopathy the first thing that you tried when you realized that your son had Pans?
Actually, antibiotics was the first thing that we had tried. And at that time, to be honest, we didn't know that he had Pans. What we knew is that the antibiotics took his symptoms away. And so once that stopped working was when we kind of started entertaining other things that we might have wanted to try. But we kept being drawn back to homeopathy at that point. And so our next step was actually homeopathy.
What was it that made you decide to go to homeopathy versus all of the other options that you had beyond antibiotics?
Right. So probably two reasons. First thing was that I felt that it was the safest option to me from all of my research and everything that I had been looking at. And secondly was probably the Facebook group, Homeopathy for PANDAS. There was so many success stories that I had not seen from any other source. And that really gave me confidence to try it.
Fantastic. So once you did try it, how has it changed things for your family and for your son overall? How's it affected you guys?
It's changed everything. My son is not the same kid he was a year ago in the best way possible. And for myself, I'm doing homeopathy as well. So I started soon after him too. So it really helped me to handle all the events of last year without like completely spiraling, which was the path that I was headed down. Most of us are there when you don't know what to do for your child. It just feels very, hopeless and scary. So it definitely helped me as well, and to heal from my own set of symptoms. And so, yeah, it's really changed the game for us completely.
Awesome. Good deal. What, Chrissy, what advice would you give to someone that suspects that their kiddo has PANS or PANDAS?
The advice that I would give is just to arm yourself with information, because as you probably know, most primary care doctors either don't know what PANS is, or they know what it is, but don't necessarily know your options and how to treat it. And so becoming knowledgeable of what your options are is vital. And if you're considering homeopathy, which I obviously highly recommend, then joining the Facebook group, Homeopathy for PANDAS, is amazing because there is a wealth of information there. And even maybe more importantly, there is other moms that you can connect with at all stages in the healing journey. And so there's bound to be somebody there that is right where you are right now that you can connect with. And then just lastly, don't lose hope and know that you're absolutely not alone.
Great, and cut. One. So was homeopathy the first thing that you tried when you realized that your daughter had PANS?
Yes and no. We went first through the conventional medicine route, and both with neurologists, etc., every endocrinologist, all kinds of ologists, and also with natural doctors. We did try a homeopath for a bit of time, but it was just not the right fit for us.
Mm-hmm. So what led you to decide to give homeopathy a second try, I guess, rather than even a first try? What gave you that willingness to give it a go again, and what made you go that direction of all the options that you had available to you?
Right. Well, it took a while. My daughter at 12 years old, that was the onset of her PANS. And at the time I didn't know it was PANS, but 12 years old was the onset. And then, like I said, we tried conventional natural medicine, every possible therapy we were trying. And to be perfectly honest, I was desperate, because at that point we had spent thousands and thousands of dollars. And I was taking my daughter to appointments that every day she was riddled with so many symptoms, and I was just desperate. And one day I came across Dr. Bahr's name, and on the PANDAS network. And it was funny because we live in San Diego and she was based in San Diego. And so we decided to give it a try. Initially, I was skeptical because of my attempt with the homeopath previously. But after the consultation, my instincts just told me that this was the right path to follow.
So how did homeopathy end up affecting you and your daughter's life?
How didn't it? I mean, she, by the time we found homeopathy, it was actually, the second time it was 3 years. So she was then 15. And like I said, she was riddled with symptoms, daily seizures, physical symptoms, psychiatric symptoms. She was essentially a prisoner of her bedroom. And I never thought that she would leave her bedroom. And how it has impacted us is that from the first month, she was, I think she would have been considered like someone that would work well with the remedy and a fast responder, I guess. And we started seeing initially that the seizures started to taper down. It took a lot of time, but slowly the seizures were definitely something that we saw tapering down. And we started seeing resilience at 2015. So, we're now in 2021, but she is now 3 years seizure free. Yeah.
Awesome.
And it's actually in like 2 weeks from now. So it's like, this is always the month. But she is also not a prisoner of her bedroom. She is very accomplished, attending college 3,000 miles away, doing great, was on the dean's list last semester. And this is her last year, but she is with a social life, lots of friends and enjoying her life as she should, but is no longer susceptible to any of her triggers. Meaning, the littlest thing like a light, someone turning on and off a light would make her have a seizure. Being with any kind of somebody having a virus or any, type of illness, she would have, I won't go into all of the different symptoms that she had, but, anywhere from anxiety to OCD to just having panic attacks and seizures. And she's no longer having any of those, like everybody has a little bit of stress and, but she is a happy, healthy young woman, resilient and strong. And I never thought that this would be her life. I thought that she would be in her room for the rest of her life and not being able to go to college and beyond. And that's how it's impacted.
Denise, what advice would you give to someone who suspects that their child has PANS or PANDAS?
Well, in 2012, I did not know homeopathy. I mean, I knew about homeopathy, but our particular homeopath, I did not know about. So I would say, number one, I would try that first because everything else did not work for us. We would get a little bit of healing, a little bit of relief, but never really true healing. But most importantly, I would say listen to your mama bear instincts, because so many times I did not, and I questioned myself, and I listened to people that were going against my instinct, and I wish I had just listened to myself. And I know it will take time for you to find healing, but it is possible. It does require patience and time, and you must listen to your instincts always.
Isabella, as somebody who actually had PANS, was homeopathy one of the things that you tried when you first realized that you had PANS, or did you start with other things?
Yeah, so the whole treatment process, as you said, I had PANS, is still a bit blurry, but I think it was sort of on the back burner before I kind of got the real understanding of what PANS was, and that was something that I had. We had tried homeopathy in the past, but I think because we didn't really know what we were dealing with, and because the symptoms were just escalating, it wasn't really working, but it was sort of at the back burner. At that time, it was kind of like we had depleted all of our options. I was having seizures almost every other day, basically paralyzed very often, a lot of psychological symptoms. And so there was a lot thrown at us. I think we had tried IVIG at one point, or no, we were thinking about trying IVIG. Had tried antibiotics, that wasn't working. I'm not sure exactly. I'm sure my mom has the story of how we found you. But, you know, once we had that first 3-hour initial, I was like, I'm skeptical. I don't know if what this is. We've tried this before, but once we sort of started to see the changes, that's when it kind of became this primary source of this really does make a change, and it has made a change. But I think it wasn't necessarily the first thing we thought of.
So you were pretty young when we got started working together, and so you really didn't have a lot of decision making in choosing homeopathy. It was more like this is what your mom recommended and wanted to try, and you were willing to go with it because you wanted to get some relief, right? So once you did start homeopathy, whether it was your choice or not, once you did start homeopathy, what did you notice that had changed for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything sort of slowly started to change. I mean, my seizures were coming at a less frequency, sort of the absolute frenzy of psychological symptoms that I was having were slowly starting to decrease. And, you know, one thing that was difficult is that there were aggravations every now and then, but that's when we started to learn that that's how we knew that it was working. And that's when we had aggravations and it was almost as bad as it used to be, before we realized how much had changed at that point. And so just over time, you know, we would go from every other day, a seizure, to every week, every month, and then eventually to now, however many years later, I'm basically 3 years seizure free and free of most of my symptoms. Yeah.
Isabella, what does PANS feel like?
Yeah. So I have this kind of long-winded metaphor, but I'll try to condense it down. I think at the peak of it, it kind of felt like I was drowning. I used to know how to swim, but I just couldn't. I was just completely out of control. I was terrified. I didn't know what was happening. And it felt like no one could help me. But then once I started with Resilience Naturopathic and I started using homeopathy, again, it wasn't so much that I had this life jacket that was keeping me afloat, but it was like I was learning how to swim again. And it was like I was remembering how to really be me. And it wasn't like something was just helping me along, but it was like I was actually living again. So yeah, in the moment, it was terrifying and confusing and so difficult. It felt like the world was ending. But slowly I just started to regain bits of control of my life, which was just a really wonderful and healing thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. A beautiful metaphor.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what advice would you give to someone that thinks that they might have PANS or PANDAS?
Yeah, I would say, I think for the parents, you know your kid, and if doctors, because unfortunately there's still a bit of stigma and confusion surrounding PANS, it's important to really just stick to what you know and what your kid is telling you. And if, doctors are casting you away, to really hold on to that and not just sort of give in. And for the kids to know that, it might feel like everything around you is falling apart, but it can get better, and it does, and it's scary and terrifying, but you're not going through this alone. And really listen to yourself and don't doubt yourself for a second, because that can be, one of the most difficult things and something that I certainly dealt with. So I think it's just really listening to your instincts and speaking up for yourself and speaking your truth.
Was homeopathy the first thing that you tried when you realized that your kiddo had PANS?
No, it took us about 11 months to get to homeopathy. We began with traditional antibiotics and anti-inflammatories, and then quickly moved on to IVIG. And when we saw no response to IVIG and our rheumatologist did not recommend a second dose, we were left with the decision to move on to, bigger guns such as rituximab or plasmapheresis. And that's when we arrived at that juncture of making that decision. And I couldn't ignore the intuitive voice inside to look into homeopathy.
So what is it that made you decide to go ahead and make that leap to homeopathy?
So when we arrived at that point, I'm a nurse by background, so I was familiar with rituximab and plasmapheresis, and those are just such big guns. And where we live on the East Coast here on Little Cape Cod in Massachusetts, I knew that if we were going to pursue rituximab and plasmapheresis and, possibly looking at having tonsils and adenoids out and seeing other specialists, I knew that we would have to make very big decisions aside from treatment. We were looking at making decisions about having to split up our family, to travel to experts, to invest not only the time, but also the money in pursuing these treatments, and looking at having to leave my business, leave my elderly parents, leave our other son. And I had started to read stories of other moms who had already started homeopathy, and I could not ignore all that anecdotal information that their children were healing, and not just healing, but also going on to just thrive. And I looked at my husband and I said, before we commit to further, traditional allopathic medicine, we have to try homeopathy. It can't hurt. It can only help, and we have to try this. We have to make a commitment to try this first. And I'm just so glad we did.
Well, so then I'm dying to know what has shifted for you since making that decision to try homeopathy.
Oh gosh. Well, the shifting, and all the other parents who have started homeopathy, the shifting is such a roller coaster, but the positive shifts have been a reduction in some of the symptoms that have just been so traumatic to endure. And for our kiddo, it was the physical aggression that was targeted toward myself as mom, to go through months of physically, being hit and bit, and just the rage that was going on in our home, to see that rage come down and even disappear, along with the awful symptom that he has, which is urinating all over our home, that has disappeared. And we just see these glimpses of our old child coming back, and we have these periods of the old Miles. And I just can't tell you, the first time when we first started seeing symptoms just go away and things just getting better, I drove to the beach and just cried like tears of joy in my car to see our child coming back. So those are some of the symptoms for us that have improved.
Awesome. What advice would you give to someone who suspects that their kiddo has PANS or PANDAS?
It's a big question because there's just so much. Right? I know. So I thought about this for a while. I would say, number one, take a big, deep breath in and make sure you exhale, and prepare yourself for the most challenging endurance event you will probably ever face. I entered into this having run 20 plus marathons and doing multiple different Ironman triathlons. So I use this analogy that it's an endurance event. And in order to endure an endurance event, you must prepare, you must preserve energy. And I would say, besides learning to take big, deep breaths in and then big, deep breaths out, assemble a support system for yourself. and assemble a toolbox and fill that with things and ideas and people that are going to just surround you and help carry you through this journey, and to preserve your energy, which means please don't waste time with people that don't understand, or people that aren't supportive. You really want to look at how you can create a new life for yourself, because it is a new life. And as much grief and trauma as there is, there's also so many people out there to support you. So knowing that you're just never alone in this journey is huge.
Great. One. So was homeopathy the first thing that you guys decided to try when you realized that you were dealing with PANS?
No, it wasn't. We have used homeopathy for colds, allergies, that sort of thing, but it just felt like her symptoms were too severe. You know, it was kind of like, how can homeopathy help that? We saw multiple doctors, a couple different neurologists, different specialists. She was put on antidepressants, antipsychotics, sedatives, lots of supplements, and we tried diet changes and just really didn't see a huge improvement. And in fact, we saw horrible side effects. And so it might have helped a little bit with some of her symptoms, but they were way worse to be on.
So what is it that made you then decide to go ahead and give homeopathy a try? I mean, you already had that familiarity with it, but what made you decide to go ahead and give it a try for this?
Well, she'd actually been diagnosed with multiple things, and I just didn't know what to do. We were told, if you treat this one thing this way, that's wrong for this other diagnosis. And so I just didn't know what to do. I didn't want to pick the wrong thing. I reached out to a therapist on Facebook, a random person who worked with kids with tics. And Camryn was having tics, anxiety, OCD, intrusive thoughts, just a lot of really scary things 24/7. It had just taken over her life. And so I said, what do I do? And they said, try treating the PANDAS first. And if there's anything left over after that, then you could, treat those other things. And so we tried to get into this, our state's only like PANDAS specialist, but we had to jump through so many hoops. We had to see so many specialists, and it was COVID time. So we just couldn't even get an appointment. And so I knew we weren't going to see the PANDAS specialist. The doctors that had diagnosed her with PANDAS, she'd been diagnosed twice with PANDAS, but they didn't know how to treat it. And so at that point I thought, well, let's just try homeopathy because it's not going to hurt anything. I had joined your Facebook group already. And so I thought, well, let's just try it and see, because we didn't know where else to turn.
So once you did bring homeopathy to address the PANDAS into your life, what's shifted so far? I know it's still pretty early for you guys.
A lot. Actually, after her first dose, she was able to go on a field trip 3 hours away with her class. And she hadn't even attended school full time at that point last year. And so, sorry, there's a fly. And so that was huge. I really didn't think she was going to be able to do that. We've seen a lot of ups and downs, but her anxiety has improved tremendously. The OCD, a lot, right? We were able to get her off of those nasty medications that had really scary side effects. Just everything. Her tics have really improved. They were full body, motor, vocal, to the point where she couldn't walk sometimes. And, she's doing really well. This year, she's been able to go to school all day, every day. Me talking about it's making it.
But it's so small now. So small, right?
Yeah. Oh, it is. She's getting her life back. And so it's just been huge.
Yeah.
Awesome. Camryn, what does having PANS feel like?
It really just, especially, sorry.
You're fine. You're totally fine.
When it first began, it was definitely felt stressful and like I was out of control. It definitely felt very scary and unknown because obviously it just came on so onset and I did not know what was happening.
Yeah.
And how do you feel like homeopathy's helped you so far?
It has helped me in many different ways. It has changed my life, really. It's helped me sleep. I used to not be able to sleep. I can now sleep better. my allergies for one. My anxiety is so much better. My OCD, I can live more freely and do more things that I want to do with homie.
Awesome, wonderful. And so I'll ask you first, Camryn. What advice would you give to a friend that might suspect that they have PANS or PANDAS?
I would definitely tell them not to worry, that there is ways to help it. It's going to be scary at first, but you'll get through it. And there's people like us and other people doing this that can help you and are going through the same thing. So you are not alone.
Great. And Liz, what about you? What advice would you give someone, a parent that suspects that their child has PANS or PANDAS?
I would say try homeopathy. I wish somebody had just told me that in the first place and made me do it. But don't give up either. You know, we saw so many doctors, therapists, all kinds of different people. And it was so frustrating because we just kept hitting dead walls and not getting answers and not knowing what to do. We just really felt alone, but we just kept trying. And now things are in such a good place and we know she's going to get better. And so, but then also reach out for help. Your Facebook group is wonderful. It can be a really lonely journey. And so reach out for help for people who have been through it too.
So was homeopathy the first thing that you tried when you realized that your kiddo was dealing with PANS?
No, and I wish it was.
What other things did you try, and or like what made you decide to go ahead and get going with homeopathy?
So we tried. He got sick in 2017. We didn't get diagnosed until 2018 in May, and then we went to see a PANS neurologist that's been in the media, and she diagnosed him with that and said he needs Rituxan, and we didn't know any better. We had no idea. We're like, okay, let's do it. And it was just awful. And he finally got out of it after 2 months and came back around, but he was on antibiotics and for like the better part of another year and a half before we finally started with homeopathy. And I had been doing, I wasn't working. My job was to heal my son. And I would do these like deep research on all the forums. And I kept seeing, I was like, my son's on antibiotics. If we stop it, the OCD comes back. The rage is still there. His cognitive deficits are still there. But how am I going to stop this antibiotics, right? And I kept seeing people say homeopathy. And I always like remember that. And that's kind of what led me to looking into that, because I wanted him to one day not have to be on antibiotics.
Yeah. So what shifted once you guys did start homeopathy?
So one of the big things that inspired it was the mold. We had mold also in our house that we didn't realize until 2019. And when we moved away from our place so that it could get fixed up. And we started homeopathy because at that point it was just you, Dr. Bahr, and it was like a 4-month waiting period. But I also did a lot of research with mold, and they kept saying homeopathy helps. I didn't know any better though, because they were talking about compound versus classical, but I thought, oh my gosh, I have to help him with the antibiotic to be able to stop antibiotic. And now this can also help with his mold. Okay, so I was like, I called and your husband answered. At that point, he was the one scheduling. I'm talking, this was like May of 2019. It was just, I think it was just you maybe, and Dr. Peterson, I don't know when she came in. And he scheduled me to see you, and I just had a lot of hope for homeopathy. I had no idea what it was. All I knew is that people that I trusted liked it and recommended it.
So what have you seen in your family though, once you got started with it? What shifts have you seen?
So with my son who had PANDAS, he started in September of 2019, and it was amazing. Like it helped with his, he went from being ragey to just irritable. And and it's amazing. He was able to sleep by himself within like 3 months. He started wiping his butt again also, which was amazing because
small but huge victories. Yeah.
Their 10-year-old lose the skill like that, right?
Yeah.
And to have him regain the skill to sleep alone, wipe his butt again, and tie his shoes, was just one of the things that told me that we were in a good place. Because I couldn't point to anything else that had helped, because we were like Jody's we were on a ton of supplements and before that. So
yeah. And Patricia, can you share with us kind of a viewpoint from the boys' view of what it's like having PANS?
So David will say that he doesn't have PANDAS anymore because he doesn't have worry thoughts. So sometimes when the OCD comes in or other little things and I kind of let it slip, oh my goodness, is it the PANDAS? He goes, Mom, I don't have that anymore. I don't have any worry thoughts. So for him, he really equates it with that high anxiety that he experienced. So yeah, that's
Perfect.
what.
And then how, between both of them, how did homeopathy help both of them and their viewpoint of what do they think of homeopathy, basically?
It's so, I can't tell you how. So my son just reached 2 years on homeopathy and he's grown. He's gorgeous. He looks beautiful. Like he's thriving. Like his other doctor, his functional doctor says that growth is a luxury with sick children. And he is now taller than me. My 12-year-old is like 5'8". When he started this process, he lost 20% of his body weight. He shrank. Like we had all his clothes no longer fit and we had to go back to his second grade clothes that we had put away to give away. So I wanted, I would have done it sooner, but with my oldest son, I realized this year, after everything that's been happening, that he had PTSD from his brother, watching his brother so ill, because PANDAS is horrible illness that really impacts the whole family. These kids are neuropsychiatric. They are explosive, and there's a lot of conflict, hostility in the home that my oldest experienced. And I realized that he had PTSD, and I tried for him to go to therapy and get EMDR, but he just wasn't taking that. So my last attempt was like, I knew it could help his mental health. So I signed him up for homeopathy with RN, and he started in September, early September. And I feel like I have my beautiful son back, my 20-year-old. He's just been able to, he's calmer, he's cooking again, he's nicer to be around. He told me that he's figuring things that he was stuck on in his mind, like conflict that he had with other people, that he's like, I resolved it and I forgive them. And I can only blame homeopathy for that, because it's helping his brain work things out in a way that I was just like amazed. So me and my husband are next. We're gonna sign up because we also need that mental support.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice would you give to someone that suspects that their child has PANS or PANDAS?
I said definitely look into it, because if it's a medical issue and PANDAS and PANS is a medical issue and nothing else works, definitely look at that. If treatment starts and you're still not seeing a lot, look into mold, because I didn't know my house was moldy. I didn't see any mold. I didn't smell any mold, but my house was infested on all 4 levels with mold. And once we took that out and started homeopathy, it's been a healing journey versus a roller coaster journey of, no, it's more like a loop, because you're not even moving forward. You're just in a loop. Yep. So we're not there anymore. He went back to school after 4 years. He's finishing assignments. The school provided an aide for my 7th grader to follow him around to make sure that he was okay. But he's actually been they took that aid away because he doesn't need it. And he's been getting up, going to bed on time, getting himself ready in the morning. It's just been really beautiful to watch that. And that's why I'm here at work right now. I'm in my office ready to start my job, because if it wasn't for homeopathy and the healing that it has provided, I wouldn't be here at work, doing the job I love, which is social work.
One. So was homeopathy the first thing that you decided to try when you realized that your kiddo was dealing with PANS?
No, we didn't know anything about homeopathy at the time. And we felt really lucky that we got a quick referral to our neurologist, to a local neurologist. And no, we tried antibiotics, steroids, neurofeedback, more antibiotics, antifungals, psych meds, supplements, high dose IVIG, more psych meds, CBD, nasal ketamine. Many things worked. Many things worked a little bit, and then they didn't work for very long. And some things made things worse. And what started with sudden onset OCD turned into rage, turned into just negativity, turned into suicidal thoughts and actions, turned into hating family members, immediate family members. And so no, we didn't try homeopathy right away. We actually had a close friend whose daughter was diagnosed really closely in time with our son. And about halfway through about a year into our journey, she found you, Resilience, and she started using homeopathy. And she was telling me, I'm just going to add you to the Facebook group, no pressure. And I watched for a really long time. And I thought people were a little bit crazy because I didn't know anything. And there were bits and pieces that were not homeopathy related, and those were too much for me. So I just had to put on my blinders and really focus in on watching the homeopathy stories. We came to the point where our doctors didn't have any more tricks up their sleeves, and they were really good doctors. And so we said, well, it's time to give it a try. So we started, he's been on homeopathy for about a year.
So was there anything about homeopathy in particular that made you decide to try it? Or was it just like, I really legitimately have nothing left to try?
We had nothing left to try that we knew of. And we saw success in our friend. And what I really appreciated as I watched the stories on the Facebook group was initially I would see people posting about aggravations and return of old symptoms. And I was like, oh, my son's too complex for that. I can't have aggravations. He'll kill himself, or the things that we're dealing with, we can't aggravate these things. So I was afraid he was too complex for homeopathy, is what I thought. And but we didn't have anything else to try, and our friend was seeing success, so we said, well, let's give it a try. And I really, watching the stories of the families, what I saw was the ones that were first posting about challenges. As I watched, 2 months later, they're posting about success. And I was like, okay, I can see the pattern, and I saw it in multiple families. And if I can see the pattern in them, then I'm willing to try for that pattern because I need the success. And we saw a world of difference. And so what I now say is what I thought was too complex for homeopathy, now I say is too complex not to try homeopathy.
I love that. I love that. So tell us what you've experienced since you've actually started.
Well, rage we haven't seen in months, which is amazing. He used to hate my husband, his father. He wanted nothing to do with him before we started homeopathy. And we were seeing a psychologist. Oh, I didn't even say that. We've seen 2 psychologists, excellent psychologists. They didn't work. And now he loves dad, except for when, dad disciplines. That's normal.
Times when no kid would like dad.
Normal kid.
Yeah. But he, he'll spend time with dad. His brother was his enemy, and now his brother is his friend, and he wants to do things with him and interact with him. He used to engage in self-harm, and that has not happened. He used to daily do real risky behaviors, almost just for the sake of the thrill and what's going to happen, and that doesn't happen anymore. In his rages, he used to take our family canvases and try to stab them with a knife. So all the canvases are down, but we're slowly putting them back up because we slowly see like, okay, maybe we can trust that it's not going to go there. And so OCD is kind of our biggest hurdle. And I just have faith that over time, we see that improving over time, little by little. And I have faith that someday it's going to be gone. Oh, and another change, we're homeschooling since COVID. And last year he used to rip up the math papers and throw them in my face. And now he's doing math and he gets it and he can process it and he's writing again, and he wouldn't write last year. So even like just the academics are coming back and the ability and the willingness, that's the will.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. Cori, what advice would you give somebody who suspects that their child has PANS or PANDAS?
First, take a deep breath. PANS is like the ultimate gaslighter, and it works really hard to make you think you're crazy. And so my first advice is to recognize that it's not your fault and you're not crazy. And then call Resilience and get on the waiting list and fill out your paperwork, because you won't be on the waiting list for very long, as long as you think you will. And take the chance to give it a try and really just learn to become the observer and trust your doctor. And it's been a journey for us and the doctor, just realizing our son is very slow. And, that's taken us off course at times. And now we know, hold out. No changing, just, stick it out, and then we see more improvement. And so those are my little bits of advice. You're not crazy.
One. So was homeopathy the first thing that you tried when you realized that you were dealing with PANS or PANDAS?
No, we tried utilizing antibiotics with our pediatrician first for quite a few months. And when that didn't work, we tried to do a TNA. We had tonsils out, and that put us into one of the worst flares that we had ever seen. 3 months later, we got a really high fever after Christmas, and we had strep again, even without the tonsils. So it kind of defeated the whole purpose of all of that. And, we started driving across the state of Texas to see a specialist, did tons of labs, traumatized my kiddo from needles, and did about 6 months of antibiotics straight and just totally wrecked his gut. And then we were told about homeopathy from a fellow PANS mom. And our next step was IVIG. So to me, I couldn't move forward with that with a needle traumatized child before I tried everything else first.
So what was it about homeopathy that made you willing to take that leap, other than the fact that it doesn't involve needles?
Well, that's the primary thing. It didn't involve any blood draws. It didn't involve us traveling over 200 miles to see a doctor that really gets us. We no longer had to take large amounts of supplements, and we haven't had the need for antibiotics or anything like that since starting homeopathy. The ease of administration alone has made such a huge difference with my kiddos. And to be perfectly honest, it's just been the most forward progress that we've seen with anything else. While it has its ups and downs and its forwards and backwards, overall we have much less rage, much less defiance, which were our biggest obstacles, and a lot less OCD as well. My younger kiddo has also had a significant stutter lesson and is having much better sleep. So, and then for me personally, I've started homeopathy, and because of its unique nature, it's allowed me to really understand exactly what my boys are experiencing without having to have a PANS and PANDAS diagnosis. So I know what a positive response feels like. I know what it feels like to aggravate, and I can really empathize with my kiddos, which I think is just such a unique experience that I would never get with any other sort of treatment. You just can't get that anywhere else.
Yeah. So it sounds like homeopathy has really made a big difference in your family, enough so that you are even doing it yourself now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Brittany, I know that you had asked Gatlin ahead of time a couple of questions. I'm curious to know his feedback as far as what it feels like having PANS.
Yeah, so I did ask him, and at first he was like, I don't really know. He didn't really know what to say. He's only 7. And so, but then he told me that a lot of times it just feels like his brain is bossing him around. He calls his brain meanie head. a lot in our house. That is a bad word, until he's talking about his brain being a meaning head. And particularly with the OCD, it tells him he has to do things over and over and over again. And he says that he knows his brain is wrong, but it tells him to write things and erase letters over and over again because they're not right, or read things over and over again because it's not right. And that his brain is just bossing him around and he feels powerless against it.
Yeah. And did he have any feedback on how he feels like homeopathy is helping him?
He didn't particularly, but what I can tell you is that, after doing this for about 15 months, there are times where he tells me, Mom, my brain's not right. I need my remedy. I need my remedy. So while he can't quite verbalize exactly what that is, him just asking for his remedy because he knows it makes his brain feel better is huge.
Yeah. And what advice would you give somebody that suspects that their child has PANS or PANDAS?
Don't stop. Don't stop. Whatever you do, keep fighting to get those answers. And before you waste a ton of tears and energy and money and time and heartache chasing down all of these other things, and to try to find a doctor that actually believes you or believes in PANS and PANDAS, just, I wish I would have started with RN way before we did all of these things. That would be my advice, is just start here. I wish I would have known to go down the homeopathy route when Gatlin was 3.5 instead of wasting 2.5 years of his life to get there. And now with my younger son, we have had the opportunity to just plug him in with resilience when we realized that we were dealing with PANS in him as well. And he's never had to do the antibiotic route, never had to do the lab draws, never had to do all those things. And he just gets the opportunity to start healing instead of having to go through this whole roller coaster before then. So just don't hesitate. Don't stop.
Was homeopathy the first thing that you decided to try when you realized that your daughter was dealing with PANS?
Homeopathy was not the first thing we tried. We went the traditional route of finding a physician that was familiar with PANS and PANDAS. We did multiple supplements, like 20 a day. We tried like drops they had us put in the water, and we even tried antibiotics, but my daughter was herxing so bad from the antibiotics, we had to stop those. So we were kind of like at our wits' end on what to do for treatment. And my daughter's symptoms had progressed so severely that she was having seizures like on a daily basis. And I just didn't know what to do. And she was also experiencing like hallucinations and just all kinds of things. She was severely depressed, had really bad anxiety. So I learned about homeopathy was by joining the Facebook group, and I kind of monitored there for a while, and I was kind of on the fence about, because it's not very traditional. I hadn't learned anything about it prior to joining the group, but it was getting so severe that I was willing to try anything. So I actually approached my husband and we discussed it, and we just decided it was worth a shot because we didn't really have anything else we could do at that point.
So you were one of the mamas that it was an option of last resort when everything else had failed and things were just getting worse and worse, that led you to decide to give it a try. So once you did start with homeopathy, what's your experience been like? How have things shifted for your family and for your daughter?
It's been short of a miracle in our house. It has saved our family, my daughter, my husband, who didn't believe in anything that wasn't traditional, is the one who actually said this is miracle. My daughter's not having seizures anymore. She is back to being part of the family. She's not severely depressed. I'm seeing glimpses of the girl that I knew before PANS and PANDAS. So I really have to say that it saved us. My daughter was en route to being hospitalized, I think, for severe rage, aggression, and we couldn't get the seizures under control. And I was afraid she was going to be hospitalized for her mood portion, and then the seizure portion wouldn't be addressed. So like, it's been nothing short of a miracle. That's all I can say.
Yeah. And what does your daughter say about PANS? What does it feel like having PANS to her?
Well, she describes it as feeling like she had no control over her body or her mind, and she was just completely out of control, and she didn't know what to do about it. And she had severe sensory overload as well. And we kind of believe that the sensory is what was triggering a lot of the seizure activity. So she just explained it as just feeling out of control all the time.
And then what is her view of homeopathy? How does she talk about homeopathy and how it's helped her?
When I asked her about it, she said that it has greatly improved her mood. It's reduced her seizures. Her physical symptoms are getting better and under control. And with each change that we make, it gets a little better each time. So, and she was very cooperative and willing to want to do it because she had gotten to a point where there was just nothing we could do. So she was definitely open to trying something new in hopes that it would help. So she was happy that it is working.
Awesome. And then what advice would you give someone that suspects that their child has PANS or PANDAS?
First, I would say go straight to homeopathy and don't mess around with all of the testing and all of the traditional things that we've gone through. And second, I would say to find a good support group and people that are going through things like you are, because the general population doesn't really understand and they really can't relate. So I think you need to build a tribe of people around you that are supportive for the daily encounters that you're going to have, because it's a rocky road, but with ups and downs along the whole way. And the other thing is to not lose hope when you hit a patch of down, which has been a little bit hard for me in the beginning, but I'm getting better at it because, it's like we said, that roller coaster of up and down. And a symptom comes back and I think, oh gosh, is this going to be it? And we just recently had a bout of seizures on Sunday, and it had been 6 months since we had a seizure. And, for me not to lose hope at that point, because it had returned, but feeling more confident that we're going to be able to keep healing and they're going to be less and less. So I think that's my take, is just to find people who are supportive of you, join the Facebook group. That place is great.
So was homeopathy the first thing that you tried when you realized that you were dealing with PANS?
It was not. We went the conventional route first and then just realized that it wasn't giving us the healing that we wanted. And it just didn't make sense to keep kind of doing all of that to her body. And it was messing with her gut health, and we were having other symptoms. And it just, I wanted to find something that felt like it was actually healing her.
So what is it that made you decide to shift over to homeopathy?
The susceptibility piece really made sense to me, because a lot of people get strep or other viruses. We all do. And we don't necessarily react the way these kiddos do, or adults. And that just really spoke to me. And I felt like it made sense to try to figure out the root cause, which is the susceptibility, and to try to work on that so that she could heal and not be so susceptible to this reaction.
Right. So once you did start with homeopathy, what sort of things did you see shift? Like how did your symptoms get better? What got better, and how did things shift for your family?
So right off the bat, we noticed a decrease in her anxiety. She had a lot of social anxiety and separation anxiety. She's also having a lot of rage, frequent urination, OCD, all that fun, terrible stuff. And I mean, she actually is a really fast responder. So it happened within 15 minutes of the first dose. That hasn't necessarily stayed true. But that, I mean, we were lucky because we did see such a big shift very quickly.
Great. Amelia, what does it feel like having PANS?
It feels like a giant computer. PANS feels like a giant computer. Like my brain acts like a giant computer, and it has like malfunctions and I can't control it.
Yeah. Like a broken computer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you feel like homeopathy's helped with that?
I feel like it's helped me to be me again by making me less anxious and mad, and it's helped me to be happy and normal.
Great.
Awesome.
And I'll ask you first, Amelia, if you had a friend that suspected, that thought they might have PANS, what kind of advice would you give them?
Just to be brave and fight through it.
Perfect. And how about you, Ashley? What advice would you give to someone who suspects that their child might have PANS or PANDAS?
I'm trying not to cry.
You're
To be brave and to ask a lot of questions and to trust your mama gut, because it's not wrong. And don't let people tell you that this doesn't exist and that this is not happening, because this is real, regardless of what the medical community is still catching up to. This is a reality, and don't let people bully you into thinking that it's not.
So was homeopathy the first thing that you tried when you realized that your daughter had PANS?
No. So she, at the time of diagnosis, was struggling with rage meltdowns that lasted 5 hours. I mean, we didn't count it, but 5-ish hours a day. And at that point, we were looking into infections. So we were treating the infections with natural, whatever our doctor was prescribing at the time to hopefully change the behavior. She was also in physical therapy, occupational therapy. We had done like heavy metal detox stuff, and really were not seeing any, like, if the improvements were there, they were so small that it was just like trying to survive off of breadcrumbs, So yeah, we did not initially start with homeopathy, and it took me a while, even though I had experienced homeopathy for myself, to realize that it could treat this complex of a problem.
So what is it that made you decide to finally take that leap and dive into homeopathy?
Yeah, so I was in the Facebook group, the Homeopathy for Pans and Pandas Facebook group, and I'd been just watching these kids, like watching the parents share how their kids were recovering, and started to kind of, warm up to the idea that, like, okay, it was really time to do something different. And it was hard and scary to shift gears because your kid is already so fragile that it's just scary. It just is. But then I heard your story, Jennifer, and I was like, okay, if she can do this, we can do this. And I know that if she can heal, then we can heal. And I just decided we didn't have time to waste anymore. And, our family was suffering because of it. And it was just time to take that leap. And it's been completely life-changing.
So what has changed since you started homeopathy?
So much has changed. Well, I was shocked because I really was not expecting rage to be the first to go. I'd watched all the videos and like, usually the first symptom is the last symptom to go. And that I just had like mentally prepared myself that that's probably not going to be the first thing, but it actually was the first thing to go. So she went from having, rage 4 to 5 hours a day to maybe 3 or 4 times a week to she's having rage and she's responding to her remedy. And so it's manageable. And then just kind of layer by layer dealing with some of the attention deficit stuff, the hyperactivity, noise sensitivity, sleep issues. She was having a ton of anxiety and sleep problems at the same time. And she's showering on her own, sleeping on her own. I mean, all the things that are just kind of buried underneath this in the rubble of pans and pandas that you kind of don't even realize are problems until you start to peel back, realize like, oh, she's having a lot of these other micro problems as well. And so a lot of those have resolved at this point.
Great. And I'm curious how, how has homeopathy impacted you as a mom?
Oh, like, how do you even nutshell that? Honestly, it's given me my kid back. I mean, honestly, like, even though like we're in a little bit of a rough patch right now, and I have enough history with homeopathy with her to know that it's a bump in the road and I might need some reminders, but for the most part, it's like, I mean, our kid didn't smile at us or give us hugs for almost 2 years. So like having her like be receptive and loving and relational. And even if we have hard weeks or, days, it's like we have our hope back, we have our family back, and it's changed us. But I mean, there's no dumbing that down. But there's, it's undeniable that we are where we are because of homeopathy.
Yeah. And can you share with us a little kind of in Alexis's words, what it feels like having pans and pandas?
Yeah. So we actually were just talking about this a couple weeks ago, and she was like, it's like knowing what you want to do, but not being able to do any of it. And I was really kind of shocked by that, because when you're looking at the outside of the behavior, it doesn't look like that. It looks like they're just kind of being not very nice, like, especially if you're dealing with rage or defiance or meltdowns, it's hard to manage that stuff. But to hear it from her perspective, like, I know what you're telling me, and I know like what I should be doing, but I can't do any of it. And I can't regulate my emotions, or I can't, it's like basically having zero control over your body. And then afterwards, she's able to articulate, and she's like, I don't recognize it until afterwards. So like she's mentioned, like, I know when the remedy's working, because it's like I'm in my right mind again.
Yeah. And you led me right into my next question on, what her perception of how homeopathy has helped her is.
Yeah. Yeah. And she is, I would say she's not always aware that she needs it, or like she's not totally self-aware that she needs her remedy at a specific time. She can tell now when she's in a flare. I think I'm flaring, Mom. Like, I think I think I need my remedy, or she's getting there, but she's not always able to articulate, that she needs it, but she can tell afterwards. Like, I will often ask her, like, do you feel better now that you had your remedy? And she's like, yeah, I can tell, but I want to know that she can tell that difference too.
Yeah. And what advice would you give to someone who suspects that their kid might have PANS or PANDAS?
Go see you. Besides that, no. But literally though, that is what I would say. But besides that, I would just say, don't give up. There is hope. There's, I don't know how many thousands of families out there that are right where you are. There are doctors who want to help you, that have this, the skill set and the knowledge base to get you from where you are right now to where your child needs to be thriving. And you will get your family back. You will get your life back. It's going to be a journey, but it is possible. That's what I would say. That's what I would have needed to hear.
Was homeopathy the first thing that you tried when you realized that your son had PANS?
No, I hadn't even heard of homeopathy at that time, but we went through the realm of medical doctors, our psychiatrist. We went through, a neurologist. And basically we just kept getting the same thing. It is not a real thing. PANDAS and PANS is very uncommon, and more than likely your son just has autism. Mm-hmm. And so we just basically were following what the doctors told us to do. We were doing antibiotics, all the supplements. One step led to the next with see this doctor for that, do this doctor for this. And we just really were doing all of it up until we did discover homeopathy.
So what was it that led you to give homeopathy a try?
Well, after trying everything else, IVIG was our last try, and it just didn't, we got him about 80% back, and really, I just knew there was more. And so from that point, I started doing research on homeopathy, and actually homeopathy came up quite a bit on the PANDAS parents page, which is where I found you guys. And the stories were unbelievable. I'm like, this has to be real. This has to be a real thing, even though I don't believe it. It has to be a real thing. So, right. Dr. Cohoy, our original doctor, she knew I was very much a skeptic. Just like, it just can't be this easy. After all we've been through, it can't be this easy. But at that point, I just didn't have a choice. I'm reading these stories of healed families like Jody's, and I figured there's got to be something to it. These people can't be lying. So I'm going to try it. And
So
am I glad I did?
Oh yeah. You're like one of those families that was like you tried all the other things and you were kind of almost out of options.
Yeah, I mean, I think I didn't purposely avoid it, but once I did hear about it, I really thought we were kind of doing it with the supplements. I thought, well, this is homeopathy, but really, I didn't know what really homeopathy was.
Right.
And then once I found RN's site, the Facebook page, I started learning a lot about it, and I'm like, okay, this has got to be real. I'm in. So.
Yeah. You said that you're glad that you decided to go ahead and take that leap. So what has changed with your life since you started with homeopathy?
Oh my gosh. I mean, everything is back. I feel like we have our lives back. I have my son back. Just all of it is amazing. It's just, I really just don't even believe it. And I think when I tell people that don't know, I don't think they believe it either. They probably think, oh, well, it just probably happened or whatever. I don't know. But I witnessed it and it happened. So I'm just very happy. I'm just ever so grateful for finding homeopathy, period.
Yeah.
And you.
Kim, what advice would you give to someone that suspects that their child has PANS or PANDAS?
Well, I'm spreading the word. I am actually helping another mom that actually just had her appointment with RN last week. And so I'm kind of walking her through it. But I really honestly just listen to your gut and, do the research. It's there. And I don't know. It's been so hard, but so easy. I don't even know how to describe the journey. It's been a difficult journey, but yet it's so easy too. I don't know. It's just the best of all worlds.
Yeah, that makes complete sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pan's mom to Pan's mom, you guys get it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I'm just up the road from you, so we need to hook up.
Okay. Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's one thing I love about the PANS community is that everybody is so willing to support each other. I was telling somebody earlier that it's a curse and that it's a high price to get into the community, and it's not a community you necessarily want to be part of. But we have found, at least in our little section of the community, that it is actually a very loving, very giving community, and I can't emphasize enough how important that connection and that support for each other really is. So
I think it's the only thing that's gotten me through is the parents and the page and the mom and dog talks, and all of it it's been like a full package healing, actually, community. So it's amazing.
All right, well, there we go. Let's wrap on the importance of community. So trusting your gut and the importance of community.
Yes.
Was homeopathy the first thing that you decided to use when you realized that you were dealing with PANS or PANDAS for your kiddo?
It was in a combination of other things. Our chiropractor introduced us to homeopathy. I had taken a class from a local lady who was a homeopath prior to that, but ironically my daughter had to have me leave early, so I didn't get to learn much from that, which is pretty ironic. But she did it in addition to supplements and chiropractic care.
Okay.
So yeah, but by a lot of.
So what was it that, so homeopathy was among the first things that you tried. What was it that made you decide to include that as part of your initial approach to addressing PANS?
My background is as a special ed teacher, and I knew my little guy, he was showing signs of autism, but autism symptoms came and went when he got sick, which I knew wasn't typical. So I called around and interviewed a lot of doctors and facilities, and I wasn't impressed with what they had to offer. And early intervention and all of that. Sorry about that. Since I was familiar with early intervention, and the special ed background, I knew what I could offer him with that and wanted to try something different because I wasn't happy with the outcome.
Got it. And so how has things shifted for you and for your kiddo since starting homeopathy?
Well, we have hope that he'll be well and eventually live a typical life. So he's adopted, and so a lot of his family still struggles. So that's hopeful that he won't hopefully have to endure that all of his life.
Have you seen any of his symptoms start to shift yet, or what sort of has changed? And like, how has your life as a mother also changed since starting with homeopathy?
So when he was, his initial like trigger was hand, foot, and mouth, and he became a little bit aggressive after that. And that happened in June. And then the following New Year's Eve, he just got a cold and completely changed and just wasn't able to manage his behavior. And my background is as a behavior specialist, and I couldn't either. So I knew something wasn't quite right. And he was learning to talk at that time and would just say a word once, and that was it. And I didn't even really know his personality at that point. So through homeopathy, you know, he's a really sweet, happy kid. So, and I wouldn't have known that without homeopathy. We wouldn't have known we would have just seen the aggression and furniture tipping and hitting his head and those kind of things. I really believe that he would have been headed for an institutional life at some point because his behavior was so unmanageable.
Yeah.
And Mandy, what advice would you give to somebody that suspects that their child has PANS or PANDAS?
To do your research. I definitely would look into homeopathy first. And I would say to breathe, to take lots of deep breaths and learn how to calm your nervous system, because even with the best care, it's really hard to get through the process of healing. So to make sure that you can breathe and take care of yourself by calming your body down.
One. Was homeopathy the first thing that you decided to try for your kiddo when you realized that she was dealing with PANS?
No, we had done so many other treatments. Homeopathy was actually like kind of a last ditch effort for us, just trying to save her. Her OCD was so bad, her tics, her anxiety, she just wasn't living her life. And I'm kind of regretting, honestly, like not doing homeopathy as like the first. I feel like we could have come so far and we wasted a lot of time not doing homeopathy first.
Yeah. Were there other things that you tried first?
Oh gosh, yes. I feel like it was, you know, it's like 2.5 years of a blur, but I feel like we tried absolutely everything.
All the
we could
things.
try. Yes, absolutely.
So aside from feeling like you were kind of out of options, was there anything else that made you decide to give homeopathy a try?
The success stories really drew me in. I joined the group. I had always been a part of the group on Facebook, but I had never really understood it. I didn't really take the time, you know, because I was very overwhelmed. You know, dealing with a PANS kid is so stressful. And so, you know, but I just kept seeing like homeopathy pop up. And I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to close my eyes and take the leap, because what do we have to lose at this point? You know, we've tried everything.
So how have things shifted for you guys once you did start to use homeopathy?
It was slow in the beginning. And, you know, I just kept holding on to those success stories, thinking, you know, like we're going to get there. It's just going to take time. But when we started seeing like all of the changes, you know, just her starting to come back piece by piece, you know, and now looking back, it's been a year and we're like, whoa, you know, like this has been the longest that she's been healed. I never thought that I would be sitting on this video. Like right now, I'm going to be teary about it because she just had her first homecoming. She's doing amazing. And I'm just so thankful.
Awesome.
So give us kind of a little insight into, I know that you had spoke to Jessica before this. Give us a little insight into her world. What's her take on having PANS? What does it feel like to her?
So she's always told me that PANS to her feels like she's just not in control of her body, her mind. It's scary. She feels like somebody else is living inside of her. Her brain, you know, she said, my brain hurts. It feels like it's on fire. And basically she just said like, you know, and she, like her darkest moments doesn't even really remember, I don't think, like how sick she was. And she will say like, I don't even really remember like how I felt, just that she was really bad. And she said, you know, it's just torture, because you know that like how you feel isn't normal, but like you know, you're in there somewhere. And when she started feeling normal, it almost scared her.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And then what about homeopathy? How does she view homeopathy and how it has helped her so far?
You know, I was really proud of her because she'd been through so much, taking so many medicines, so many supplements. I mean, I think at one point we were up to like 35 supplements. And I said, how do you feel about doing this, taking this leap and letting go of all of these, you know, are we taking our meds this time and this time? And she was just like, Mom, it feels right. It feels good. And she like has so in tune with her body, I think because of homeopathy and being sick. And she knows now, like, oh, I need a dose, you know, and she will say, like, it feels so weird. She doesn't say it as much anymore because she is on the good side now. But she will say, like, you know, I just feel different. I feel healthy. And, you know, we have her back, and she still has moments, obviously, but the moments are quick, and, you know, we're right back on it with the remedy and dosing. And, it's just crazy to me. It's insane.
It's so heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking when I hear kids. And the thing is, like, I experienced a similar thing myself, but like feeling healthy and feeling like quote unquote normal is such an unusual thing for kids with PANS. It's heartbreaking that like feeling quote unquote normal is uncomfortable.
It is,
but I'm so grateful that it sounds like she's getting to the place that it's no longer uncomfortable for her. It's actually flipped more, and she can tell when she needs a dose, and then that feels more uncomfortable than feeling like good.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So good.
So Candy, what advice would you give to someone who suspects that their kid might have PANS or PANDAS?
Go straight to homeopathy. Don't wait. don't do all the thousands of dollars in doctors. And I mean, I still have friends in that group, and I'm just, you know, I see their baby still suffering, and I just want to like reach through and be like, do this, please, just take the leap, try it. Because I think of like the time that we wasted when she could have been healing, when we could have just chose homeopathy first. So my advice is just do it, jump in, because you're not going to regret it. And I feel like it's the safest. I mean, everything that she went through, like, this is the thing that I felt really good about. She felt really good about, because it's her body doing what it's naturally made to do.
Was homeopathy the first thing that you decided to try when you realized you were dealing with PANS or PANDAS?
I would say it took us a while to figure out what we were dealing with first. We tried therapy and SSRIs. And once that wasn't really helping at all, and sometimes making things worse, we thankfully found PANS and PANDAS as a potential diagnosis. And from that point, we started with antibiotics, which were life-changing. Like within 2 days, we saw a difference, until about 6 months later, symptoms came back and they actually were worse. So from that point, we tried some steroids, but all along this time, I just had a gut feeling that I needed to start looking for something different. So I joined every Facebook group possible, one of which was Homeopathy for PANS and PANS. And at the time, I didn't even know what that meant. But I am extremely thankful that we found that. So I watched all the videos there and just had this sense of peace that I'd never had before, and just knew this was the answer for Will. So that was how we got to homeopathy.
What about homeopathy really made you want to give it a go? Why did you choose that?
I think really listening to the information about the healing aspect of it, the fact that it wasn't suppressing symptoms, it was actually teaching the body how to heal itself. And so like whatever symptom we had, whether it was rages or brain fog or just difficulty in school, difficulty meaning friendships, those didn't matter. We were going to be able to work on all of those things. And it didn't matter whether it was coming from mold or strep or any other virus or bacteria. It just seemed to be the best way to fit it all in.
So it sounds like you were trying to stop chasing things, and homeopathy was going to let you stop chasing things.
Exactly.
So how have things changed for you guys once you started using homeopathy?
I would say some of the really difficult things for Will growing up that we didn't even recognize were symptoms until we started using homeopathy. Were like really relationships were hard for him to hold, friendships, school was sometimes difficult, sometimes not. Sometimes we'd have months of him having meltdowns, and sometimes we wouldn't. Just something in me just knew that this was not the child that he was created to be. He was just somebody different. So homeopathy has just helped us to see that piece of him come back, the real, true Will.
Awesome. Yeah. And Will, what does having PANS feel like to you?
When it first started out, I didn't really know what it was or like what was happening to me. It just felt like this horrible feeling in my brain that I really couldn't like stop or suppress, and it was just kind of there, and I felt like there was really nothing I could do. And then we found homeopathy, and that has really helped me. But overall, it's just like a horrible feeling, and sometimes it feels better, sometimes it feels worse. It goes in waves, like you never.
He really explained it so well to me a couple of times. Since he's gotten older, he's really been able to like describe it. And one time he said, like, you don't understand, like, I can't control what I'm doing. My brain just feels like, he couldn't put in words, but he did this thing with his hands. He's like, my brain just feels like this. So that was one thing. And then another time he was having like a meltdown, and we were, we're at our last wits and saying like, we're going to take this away from you and this away from you. And he gave us this analogy once he calmed down. He's like, so when I'm having a meltdown, I am like a race car driver who's like driving without a brake. And he said, if you, when you tell me you're going to take my phone away or something away from me, it's kind of like, I can't stop the car because I don't have a brake, but yet you're telling me you're going to take my license away if I go through the finish line. So does that make sense? That's what you said, right? You were like, so by taking something away, it's actually making me more angry and more enraged because I can't control what's happening to me. I thought that one.
That's a really good analogy.
Yep. And Will, how has homeopathy helped you?
Like my mom kind of said, the antibiotics in the moment really helped me, but in the long run, that really just kind of messed up my body. But homeopathy, it's like, it's a pretty quick process, and it just overall made me feel a lot better. In school, it's a lot easier to understand what the teacher's talking about. And it's easier to like make friends and keep my friends. Overall, like taking tests has been easier in school. Just school has been a lot easier since we started with the homeopathy.
Great. Awesome. And what about, if you were to have a friend that would suspect that they might have PANS or PANDAS, what advice would you give them?
I would tell them at any time to just have someone there for them, whether it's like a parent or a teacher or a good friend or a cousin or something. Just never, like, no one's judging you because it's nothing you can control. And I find it very helpful to always just be able to talk to someone. So that's kind of the one thing I would tell that person.
Great, thank you. And Melissa, how about you? What advice would you give to a mom and dad that suspects their kiddo might have PANS or PANDAS?
I thought a lot about this, and I think like the most important things would be, I needed somebody to tell me to have hope, because healing is possible, especially through homeopathy, to learn as much as you can about PANS and PANDAS so that you can be an advocate for your child. I think that took a while for me, just trusting what I heard wherever I went, but I needed to become the most informed person in his life so that I could be an active participant in all of his medical care and just be an advocate for your child, because you just need to follow your gut instincts. Like I think that has been the most helpful thing for me.
Was homeopathy the first thing that you decided to try when you realized that your daughter had PANS?
Homeopathy was not the first thing that we decided to try. We actually I sort of co-diagnosed her because I was online doing research sort of frantically at night, and the symptoms lined up, and thankfully her pediatrician had seen PANDAS before and agreed with me that that's probably what we were dealing with. And so we were admitted to the hospital pretty early on and tried a number of interventions and medications and that sort of thing. And homeopathy started several months after some of that stuff, we had tried and seen a little bit of progress, but not quite enough. Then there was a kind of a relapse, and it was after, quite a bit of research and finding the Resilience Facebook group and really kind of learning. And I thought, well, what do we have to lose, right? And I thought I had educated myself really well on what homeopathy meant and what it entailed. And I'm still realizing there's so much to learn every day, all the time. But what we were really fortunate to do in working with you, Dr. Bahr, was to hit on a remedy that alleviated one of her major symptoms kind of immediately. And so while she's a tough case and it took a really long time to kind of really get us to a place of baseline, seeing that one major symptom kind of just lift in a matter of days was huge, and sort of reaffirming that I knew that I was doing the right thing. And I think another thing that was really important was keeping all of her caregivers and doctors on the same page at all times, and, you know, not abandoning kind of what we were doing here locally with her doctors, but also adding this in and just having the patience and the faith to see that, you know, that this was going to work over time. And I think kind of hearing from parents who have been through this journey, and also you directly, as far as this is a marathon, right? This is not a short-term thing. This is not going to happen overnight. It's going to take a little time, and just kind of settling in and knowing that that was going to be the path was really helpful. And now we're, you know, in a really great place, and it feels good to sort of be able to talk to you and smile, because there are many conversations that did not go that way.
Yes, that is very true. So what is it that made you decide to add homeopathy into the mix with what you were already doing?
If I'm being honest, what led me to start homeopathy for my daughter was desperation. You know, I think any of us who have been in somebody's life who has PANS or PANDAS knows that desperation and hopelessness are kind of words that bubble up, because the symptoms are so very intense. They're relentless. You're seeing your kid suffer and hurt and tortured in a way that you can do nothing to relieve. And not only that, but the way they're suffering and hurting is also torturing the entire family unit, right? And so we're all in this place of like, something's got to give, something's got to give. And so I have researched everything under the sun, every supplement, every modality, every therapy, you name it, and ultimately said, you know, with homeopathy, what do I have to lose? You know, at very least, we do this and it doesn't work. There's no harm, there's no danger, you know, and really what finally led me to do it was just reading through testimonials of other parents who were much further along in the journey and who were able to say with certainty, homeopathy is helping to heal my child. And that was kind of all it took. And then I think doing the consultation with you and hearing you, meet me where I was, and really not only take this disease seriously, but also take the children that you're treating seriously, and seeing that, you know, they're just scared kids that are kind of trapped beneath this, right? And that mattered to you, and it mattered to you that we get them to a place of health again. And anytime I talk to a caregiver who actually cares, then I'm all in and I'm willing to give it a go. So that's kind of what got us here.
So what shifted for you guys since you decided to bring homeopathy in as part of your plan?
Oh goodness. Well, I mean, first of all, not only my daughter, who is my PANS kid, but myself and my son are all being treated with homeopathy now. I was able to see how it works. And I think as a parent, getting that support and that relief through homeopathic treatment was huge, because not only has it helped me symptomatically and put me in a better brain space to be a parent, but it also helped me realize and sort of observe small shifts and changes in myself, just kind of become a better observer as it comes to treating my kids. And, you know, I think it's taught me a lot about patience and a lot about sticking with things and kind of, again, like being a better observer. And ultimately it's just we're just slowly rounding that corner, and we're seeing healing happen, not quickly, but having those monthly appointments to be able to sort of like look down our symptom charts and see how things have shifted. There might be months where I think, gosh, we really haven't seen that much improvement. And then I talk to you and I'm like, oh, actually these 4 things that were like, miserable last month are actually sort of slowly lifting. And so it's been helpful to kind of just have this like long game, right? And see how things change.
Yeah. Jody, you're muted.
I'm sorry. In your daughter's eyes, what is having PANS like? How does she explain it?
So it's interesting. This time about a year ago, she said to me something that really struck with me, and it came up very close to the Awareness Day. And so I started sharing it, and other parents sort of started sharing, what their kids had to say about it as well. And so what she said at the time is that she felt like her brain had herself, like that she was trapped in a torture machine by her own brain and that she could not get out. And I thought that was a really poignant way to explain that, she's fully aware and also out of her own control. And those things simultaneously, are a really horrible place to exist. This year, she has been at baseline for 6 or 7 months. And when I told her about this video and I asked her if she was willing to participate, she said yes. And I asked her that question, what it felt like or how she would describe it. And she kind of thought and shrugged and said, that's a really unrealistic question because I don't know how to explain it to anybody. And she kind of went about her day. And so I think 2 important things there are, one, I think she's right. Nobody can possibly understand what it feels like to deal with this disease unless you're living it yourself. But I think 2, the fact that she was kind of just unremarkably unimpressed with the possibility of doing this interview. And she just wanted to go back to being a tween, right? And texting her friends and doing what she feels like after school was so very important that she could just sort of shrug and say, I don't want to talk about that and be fine is like the best gift.
Yeah, no, it was actually that work that you did last year to get that put together that inspired us to ask this question, because it's so important to hear from the kids when they can about what their experience is. So sorry, go ahead, Jody.
No, that's okay. And how does your daughter feel about homeopathy and how it's helped her?
It's another thing she has sort of shrugged about. I've explained to her kind of as we've gone along with remedy changes, what we're doing and why. And I think that she does see the shifts and she does see the improvements, and she kind of trusts that, that this process is part of that. She also kind of doesn't understand it, which I think is okay. And I think is kind of an okay place for all of us. I think, as parents, when we're trying treatments for our children, we want to know everything. We want to become instant experts, medical researchers, all of the things. And yes, I think it's crucial to know what you're doing and why for your kids. And at the same time, there is a level of sort of letting go and realizing that you're working with an expert who has spent years researching and perfecting what they do and why. And, it's no different than going to, your PCP and getting their advice and taking the medicine that they tell you to take. Yes, you do your research. Yes, you talk about it, and then you kind of agree on a treatment plan. And so homeopathy is the very same in that regard. There's just like a little mystery to it, and I think in a cool way, actually. I think the fact that these remedies exist in the world and nature, and they work in the way they do is so very cool. And so as far as my daughter's concerned, she is along for the ride, and she's good with it. There are times that I remind her that, hey, we switched this remedy, and now remember that thing that was bugging you or that was going on. Now that's not happening anymore. And this is, it doesn't happen instantly, but that's kind of how it goes. So, and I joke with them that they're getting their magical potion, which probably tickles me more than them, but I think it's a fun way to look at it.
Right. So what advice would you give someone that suspects that their child has PANS or PANDAS?
Oh, that's a tough one. Because I will say when I first was led down that road and was pretty certain in my gut that that's what we were dealing with. You know, I jumped into all these Facebook groups and immediately immersed myself. And in hindsight, I would have dipped a toe in instead of jumping in, because as you all know, it is a overwhelming amount of information. And not only that, but it's a group full of either currently or previously terrified parents. And so it's a very like highly charged, high energy kind of environment. And not only that, but there are lots of ways that parents and doctors are going about treating these kids. And so the options are very many. And so I would say to sort of, yes, educate yourself, but do it slowly and breathe. And the minute you realize, as desperately as you want to help your kid immediately, that this is going to be a long road. And if you can just breathe and sit with that and accept that and know that there is another side, but it's not going to be short. I think if I had realized that sooner, treatment would have gone a lot differently, because I was just so frantically desperate to get her better immediately. And everyone I talked to said, this is not going to be fast. This is not going to be fast. And I didn't believe them. I'll be the exception. We're doing everything, the right way. And I think that would be like the most important thing, is just breathe. Know this is a long haul. Know that none of us deserve this. Our kids don't deserve it. And we definitely didn't do anything, to cause it or bring it about. And there's nothing that you could have done differently to prevent it. And honestly, I'm going to try to say this with family-friendly words. It's not fair. Nothing about it's fair. It is horrible. It is, damaging and traumatic and scary and terrifying. And it doesn't feel right for me to tell these parents to be patient. And at the same time, it's kind of necessary, because we get into this kind of like sprint, fight or flight, like we've got to fix this right now mode, and then we burn ourselves out. And so I think that would be the most important thing that I wish I had heard, is just breathe, sit. We're going to be here a minute. And then realizing that you do have the safety net of other parents who have been here, who have got you, that they've got you. I mean, we all care about each other, strangers or otherwise, so very much, because this is the club that none of us wanted to be in, but we only can understand, right?
Well, congratulations for making it through all of those videos. If you stuck it out to the end, then it probably had some things that really resonated for you. So we wanted to just invite you once again to join the Facebook group. I will say that the Facebook group is limited to people who are parents and primary caregivers of kids who have PANS and PANDAS. And we do that for one reason, and Jody will talk to you about that here really quickly. But the main reason is because we want it to be a safe, supportive place for people, because they share their most intimate struggles. And it's a place that they go to support each other, to, not just to learn about homeopathy and PANS and PANDAS, but to end up to support each other as well. So Jody, do you want to tell a little bit about the group, and then we'll wrap it up?
Yeah, in the group, we definitely take a deep dive into what's going on with our kiddos. But one of the things I love most about the group is that it's very much a support system for moms and dads that are going through the process. So the emotions, the difficulties, the things that we're going through, it's a safe place for us to go and get support there. And we want to always, be respectful and keep private those things. And so it's just important that we have the ability to get support somewhere. So.
And like I said, it's also a place where parents go to give to each other and to share their most vulnerable moments, so that they can help somebody who's also experiencing something similar to what they're experiencing. And so for those reasons, we keep it protected. That being said, though, if you think that your kiddo has PANS or PANDAS, this could be a good place to get started, to get a lot of information to help you choose which direction you're going to go. I hope that this was a useful video for you. I hope that we left you. The goal was to leave you with some hope and some healing, and to know that this is not going to be forever. Hopefully you're left with that. And if you have any questions, we are active in the group, and that's the best way to be in touch with both me and Jody. Take care, everybody.